Chapter 24 The Celestial King retreats in defeat. Chapter 24 The Celestial King retreats in defeat. No matter how strong the Blue North King was, he was still just a first heaven celestial king, and was worlds apart from heavenly venerable Tyr. How could he possibly match such ferocious might? His right arm suddenly stretched out, and a shield immediately formed in front of him. Pung! The sword she sliced the shield, and with a loud, crisp noise, the shield was immediately shattered. The sword she continued on its original course, practically undeterred. The Blue North King was stunned. He had not thought that mere sword she would have such frightening destructive power. The defense that he had laid down might as well have been completely useless. He hurriedly turned his head to the side, and dodged the sword she. Shwa, the sword she swept past, and a few strands of hair quietly drifted downwards. Ling Han had actually managed to slice a few hairs from the Blue North King's head. When the spectators below saw this, they felt a chill rise up from their limbs as numbness spread all over their scalps. Heavens, that was a celestial king, yet Ling Han actually managed to cut off a few strands of his hair. Though it was just a few strands, a celestial king had a lofty, noble standing, and was an invincible god of war in everyone's eyes, yet a few strands of his hair had actually been cut with a single sword strike. How could they believe this? This was heaven-defying. This was really heaven-defying. The Blue North King's expression was ice-cold. Not the slightest bit of anger could be seen from his expression. Only extreme calmness remained in his expression. What person that could become a celestial king did not have a willpower of iron? This power is very astounding, he said sincerely. Being capable of cutting a few strands of hair from his head was really hard to imagine. He was a celestial king, and had the grace to admit this fact. Ling Han laughed, and waved his sword. You're not going to tell me now that you won't fight, right? I have never backed down from a battle, the Blue North King declared proudly. In a battle of equals, he had never feared anyone. Then come battle! Ling Han charged out. The divine demon sword had been instilled with void particle energy, and would be able to burst out with frightening might for a short time, so he was confident that he would be able to defeat even a celestial king. The Blue North King had witnessed the might of the divine demon sword previously, and did not dare to face it head-on at all. After he retreated, he delivered a series of palm strikes, sending out palm strikes that were as massive as mountains as they descended on Ling Han. Ling Han casually blasted out sword chi. Pung, pung, pung. When every flash of sword chi sliced into a massive palm, the palm would immediately crumble. It could not withstand even a single blow. He advanced deeply, and set off in hot pursuit of the Blue North King. The people below were all practically passing out from watching this. Just who exactly was the celestial king here? How was it that it was an ascending origin Tyr was attacking a celestial king? Their view on life was about to collapse. Actually, Ling Han had stronger trump cards which he had not played yet, and that was the heaven and earth origin stars. It could kill even low-tier celestial kings. But since he had the upper hand now, he naturally would not be willing to waste such a deadly weapon. After all, he did not have many heaven and earth origin stars on him, either. The Blue North King roared out continuously, launching ultimate moves repeatedly, but in front of the divine demon's sword, any technique was only wasted effort. On the other hand, it was now Ling Han that could pose a serious threat to him, yet he could do nothing to Ling Han. With his battle prowess, if he wanted to cause serious injury to Ling Han, he would have to attack him a few hundred times in succession at least. But how could this be possibly done? After fighting another 3 days, the Blue North King finally revealed fear. Ling Han's stamina was unending, and though the power of the divine demon's sword was close to exhaustion, it could gain endless replenishment, and he could not find a hole to penetrate through at all. Furthermore, under Ling Han's continuous attacks, he had also been struck quite a number of times by the sword chi, so he was now covered with wounds, celestial king blood spurting everywhere. Don't let it go to waste! Ling Han moved, and gathered the blood that spilled from the Blue North King. Though this was not celestial king blood essence, it was still extremely valuable, and was not too inferior as compared to a Celestial King tier great herb. The Blue North King's face was livid with fury. You gather my blood right in front of me. Is there anyone else like you? Those watching below were also speechless. What kind of person was this? To do something so despicable, was he planning to become deadly enemies with the Blue North King? Good! 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 The Blue North King's whole body was trembling. He bounced back in retreat, and endless golden light surged out, forming golden mountains in front of him which blocked the sword G1 after another. He gritted his teeth, then actually turned, and left. He had abandoned even his pride as a Celestial King. He understood that if things went on in this manner, he would still be unable to kill Ling Han. Instead, it would place himself in a dangerous position. Then, he might as well cease the battle. Of course, he was definitely not going to let this go. Shio, he left in a flurry of divine light that filled the skies, and was instantly gone from sight. This? Everyone could not speak. A Celestial King had actually been forced to flee. He had fled. Who would have believed this? Even if they saw it with their own eyes, it felt like they were dreaming. If they heard others speak of this, they would definitely think that this was an extremely ridiculous joke. Ling Han withdrew his sword and stood, making no attempt to pursue. Firstly, his goal was the celestial fruits, and secondly, he would not be able to catch up. His battle prowess was actually slightly weaker than that of the Celestial King tier, but the Divine Demon Sword was really too powerful now, and that was why he had attained such glorious accomplishments. Otherwise, it should be him that could not do anything against the Blue North King, though the Blue North King would not be able to kill him, either. Husband! Ling Han! Hu Niu and the other women all pounced. Though Ling Han had even killed Celestial Kings previously, for their own safety, they had long since entered into the Black Tower, and had not witnessed it themselves. Furthermore, it was a display of Ling Han's true strength this time, which was even rarer and more valuable, and they were extremely excited at this. Ling Han smiled slightly. All right, let's harvest the fruits. And the three women all nodded. This was a familiar path for the four of them. Very quickly, they charged to the mountaintop, then climbed the cliff, and arrived at the side of the celestial tree. Ling Han stretched out his hand first, and at the same time prepared himself to intercept. If this celestial tree was going to flee, he would move decisively, and snatch the celestial fruits. The celestial tree shook gently, and endless celestial chi rose up in an extremely beautiful display. A celestial fruit automatically left the tree, and fell into Ling Han's hand. When the celestial fruit fell into the hands of a living being, he would have to consume it as soon as possible, or it had to be concocted into a Celestial King pill. Otherwise, it would soon evaporate into the heaven and earth. Ling Han immediately consumed the fruit. He might not need the celestial seed to sprout and grow, but he could study the celestial seed in his mind, and grasp the Tao of Celestial King tier in advance. In fact, he was going to gather the essence of a great many celestial seeds, and form the most perfect celestial seed. An invincible seed! He stepped out of the way, and the Empress took his place. The Empress stretched out her hand, her expression clearly bearing the domineering air that said, "If you dare not give one to me, I'll beat you till you burst." The celestial tree shuddered slightly, and another fruit fell. The Empress grabbed it, consuming it directly. Hu Niu took her place. She giggled. "Stupid tree, if your fruits taste bad, Niu will burn you." The celestial tree shook again, as if it was expressing its displeasure. However, another fruit still fell. Hu Niu got hold of it, and consumed it in a few chews. This taste was quite good, and the little girl's eyes immediately lit up. She stretched out her hand and demanded another. "Niu still wants more!" Those beneath them were all watching with both envy and speechlessness. There was no benefit to be gained even with more celestial seeds. Have you gotten addicted to the taste? The celestial tree was not willing to give a second fruit, so Hu Niu could only retreat gloomily. Bewitching Maiden Ro took her place. However, when the bewitching Maiden Ro stepped forwards, the celestial tree shook and shook, and a fruit only dropped down after a very long time, as if it was hesitating whether or not to give a fruit. This should be because the bewitching Maiden Rose performance was slightly subpar, and had not completely won the approval of the celestial tree. However, for better or worse, she was not disappointed. At this time, Ling Han stretched out a hand again. Naturally, there was no reason that a celestial fruit should go to waste. Chapter 24-25 Ransacking the Place of a Celestial King. Chapter 24-25 Ransacking the Place of a Celestial King. The celestial tree trembled lightly, and did not drop down another celestial fruit. It seemed to be saying that Ling Han had already obtained a celestial fruit, and no benefits would be gained from getting another. It was not willing to surrender another. Ling Han smiled and said, "I will concoct it into a celestial king pill, and will definitely not waste it." When these words fell, the celestial tree shuddered again, and then did something that Ling Han had not foreseen. It uprooted itself, and then a few thick roots coiled together, as if they had formed into a few legs. Then, it ran off in a flash. This speed was astonishingly fast. In just a few steps, it had already fled into the distance. Though Ling Han had already prepared himself to intercept, the moment the celestial tree moved, he found out why even the Blue North King had not interfered. It could not be stopped. It was really too fast. The celestial tree did not have very great battle prowess, nor did it have strong defense, but this speed was definitely supreme to all celestial kings. Perhaps only a fifth heaven celestial king and above could successfully intercept it. On the celestial path, this naturally could not possibly happen. There weren't even any fourth heaven celestial kings here, what more fifth heaven celestial kings? Ling Han sighed, and could only settle for looking for the next celestial tree. "Let's go." They descended from the cliff, and everyone was looking at Ling Han with extremely reverent gazes. This was a guy that could force even a celestial king into fleeing, and he himself hadn't even become a celestial king yet. The moment he set foot in this cultivation level, just how strong would his battle prowess be? The strongest celestial king in history? Ling Han swept a glance over them. Minor characters like the red-clothed woman and the others had long since fled. Clearly, they feared that Ling Han would be calling them to account. Even a celestial king had fled, so what were they worth? "Let's go to Blue North City." Since they had already feuded with the Blue North King, there was naturally no need to be reserved any longer. Ling Han brought the three women with him to Blue North City, barged directly into the Celestial King Manor, and then ransacked the entire manor. However, the Blue North King had only ascended Dao for just several billion years, and had too many descendants. Hence, his wealth was not very great, so as Ling Han and the others ransacked his abode, they were mumbling complaints that this Celestial King was really too poor. If the Blue North King heard this, he would probably be coughing up blood. "You guys have gone too far, haven't you?" This Celestial King did not return to his manor, and it was unknown where he had gone. Ling Han did not care either. At worst, they could have another battle. Just how big was Blue North City? The news of the Celestial King Manor being ransacked immediately spread through the entire city, and everyone was gaping with shock. They had not imagined that outsiders would actually be so ferocious, to actually beat a Celestial King into fleeing. There were also many people who did not believe it, and ran to the Celestial King Manor. It was only when they discovered that all the guards had fled that they finally believed it. After their ransacking, Ling Han and his group continued on their journey. The celestial path would only open once every 10 billion years. This was a set arrangement of the heaven and earth. Then, it was extremely possible that there were many celestial trees here that would be blooming flowers and bearing fruits which would ripen at the same time. Thus, Ling Han decided to set out quickly. Otherwise, those like Ji Wuming were completely qualified to obtain the celestial seed with the help of Crimson Demonic Earth. If he did not rush, it was probable that he would end up with nothing. They set out on their way. While Ling Han and his group nurtured the celestial seed, they felt the change from the ascending origin tier to celestial king tier. After consuming the celestial fruit, there was only a single imprint, and this was the true celestial seed. If one used his own will to nurture it, communicating with great Tao, it would sprout and ultimately grow into a celestial tree. Ling Han and the others all had more ambitious pursuits, and had no plans of having this imprint turn into a celestial seed. They merely placed it in their minds, and carefully observed it. Because they had ransacked the residence of the Blue North King, they were now falling behind other outsiders. Over a dozen days later, they arrived at the next city, and there was similarly a celestial king overseeing this city. Ling Han made his inquiries first, and discovered that there was no celestial tree here. Hence, they did not stop over, and merely continued their journey. They simply hired a carriage, and took their journey slowly and easily. In any case, they had a ride, and they themselves could comprehend inside the carriage. A naturally complete celestial seed contained too many secrets. Though it was only a mark, it could manifest into countless possibilities. If we can fully comprehend the secrets of this celestial seed, we may be able to comprehend the secrets of the celestial king tier in advance, and would be able to use celestial king tier power to a certain extent, Ling Han said. The three women all nodded. This mark was naturally born from the heaven and earth, and contained the secrets of becoming a celestial king. Only if they truly comprehended the secrets within would they possibly be able to turn the mark into a celestial seed, in which it would grow and mature. And the key of all this was actually at the first step, comprehending the secret of the celestial king tier, and then using the celestial seed to communicate with the heaven and earth and extract the essence of regulations. They all cultivated carefully. Without a celestial seed, the celestial king tier seemed unrealistic, and could not be touched at all. But now that they had a celestial seed, they could finally touch the threshold of the celestial king tier. Though it was only the threshold, and there was still a long stretch for them to go. Day after day passed, and they felt that there was a certain level of increase to their strength. For Ling Han, this kind of increase wasn't actually of much help to raising his full battle prowess, because without becoming a celestial king, his vitality index in terms of regulations could never break through to 5,000 points. It was still his body art that was stronger. The four of them had reached an agreement. There should still be a transition stage between the Celestial King tier and Ascending Origin tier, and this could be termed Pseudo-Celestial King tier. The strength of a Pseudo-Celestial King was extremely close to Celestial King tier, but could not truly touch that threshold, because once Vitality Index reached 5,000 points, that would be the Celestial King tier. A few months later, they arrived in a new city. A piece of explosive news was heard here. A complete celestial seed had appeared. It was in the depths of an abandoned garden. From afar, a celestial herb could be glimpsed, and it bore a single celestial fruit. Its fragrance could be smelled from a range of 50 kilometers, and a great many people were cultivating outside the garden, absorbing the celestial seed shards within the fruity fragrance, and ultimately pieced out a single celestial seed. According to legends, the closer one got to the heart of the celestial path, the closer to flawlessness and perfection the celestial seed that appeared would be. Ling Han and his group immediately set out, journeying towards that garden. However, after traveling 3 days, the path ahead of them was cut off. The mountain path was steep and rocky, and there was a mysterious power flowing around, which stopped the progress of carriages. Hence, Ling Han told the coachman to wait there, while he and the 3 women continued onwards. Little Terror was looking listless. Ever since coming to the celestial path, its condition had not been very good. It was possible that this place was too close to the core of the celestial realm, and it, as a battle beast of the foreign realm, was feeling even greater repression. The 4 of them walked for over half a day's time, and arrived at the waist of the mountain. The way ahead of them suddenly opened up to a wide panorama, revealing a stretch of ruins that occupied an astonishing surface area. This should have been a beautiful sacred palace before, but most of the structures were already destroyed now, leaving behind remains of walls that were only half the height of an adult and stone pillars that had fallen onto the ground. However, it could still be seen how majestic and austere it had once been. Through these broken remains of the walls, it could be seen that there was a garden in the deepest corners of the palace courtyard. That place was already barren, but there was still a plant that was completely green like jade growing there. Its leaves looked like swords, with a dense purple mist spreading from it. From the first look, they knew that it was extraordinary. And at the very top of this plant, there was a crimson fruit. This was even more extraordinary, as it was actually entwined in lightning, and this kind of lightning caused a powerful fright to rise up in their hearts even when they were looking at it from such a far distance. It was like they were faced with a heavenly tribulation. Lightning-aligned celestial seed! Ling Han and the others all concluded. Celestial seeds also had varying elemental alignments. For example, the celestial seed they had previously obtained was wood-aligned, and it should be that a single celestial tree or celestial herb could only bear celestial seeds of the same elemental alignment. Chapter 24-26 Scene of Ruins. Chapter 24-26 Scene of Ruins. When Ling Han looked around, there really were masses of people here. There were many heads of black hair as far as the eye could see. Of course, there were also oddities, people who had red, green, golden, or even other more outrageous colors of hair. These were mostly wild beasts taking human form. Though they now had human form, they were still different in the end. At present, everyone was extremely silent, and were seated around that ruined garden, as if there was a celestial king there that was presently passing on his teachings, and teaching them supreme knowledge. No one attempted to barge into the garden and pluck the celestial fruit. They seemed unusually well behaved. Ling Han glanced at the three women, and nodded. "Let's go." The four of them strode forwards. They already possessed the mark of a celestial seed, and as they comprehended, their strength had increased, and was heading towards a level of Pseudo-Celestial King tier. Now they really feared no one. They were just about to pass the others when someone in front of them immediately shouted, "Don't you know the rules?" Ling Han smiled. "There are rules." "Of course," that person declared proudly. "Without enough strength, you would not be qualified to even enter here. Do you see that side? Just stay there." He pointed at a corner. Ling Han looked over. That was already outside of the garden, and there were a great many people seated there too. However, there was clearly still a lot of empty space in the garden, yet they did not take another step further. Clearly, those were all weaker people, and that was why they could only stay outside. The fruity fragrance they could absorb there would naturally be considerably weaker. Ling Han turned back around, and smilingly said, "I am very strong." "Pooh!" that person scoffed. He had never seen such a shameless person that would actually praise himself. "Greetings, Grandmaster Ling!" Their conversation had alerted those in the area, and when an outsider spotted Ling Han, he hurriedly stood up, and bowed towards him respectfully. The reverence and fanaticism in his expression was practically about to spill over. Ling Han nodded very casually. "What is your name?" "I am Fu Dong," the person quickly replied in excitement. Though he was only an ascending origin tier, and could also advance into Celestial King tier himself, in front of Ling Han, he was willing to play the role of a lackey. It could not be helped. Not only was Ling Han a 5-star Grandmaster, his own battle prowess was even more terrifying. In the future, he would definitely become the strongest Celestial King, or at least one of the strongest. Ling Han gave an O, and stated smilingly, "Brother Fu." Fu Dong was even more excited. Who said that Ling Han was not an easy person to deal with? He's very polite. As for those that spread the gossip, they were just jealous. When the person from earlier saw this, his expression involuntarily changed to shock. He was a local resident of the Celestial Path, and naturally would not recognize or know of Ling Han, yet he knew Fu Dong because the latter had fought his way in with true strength, and had proven that he had the right to stay here and cultivate. But this kind of elite was actually so humble and modest in front of Ling Han, looking completely like he was willing to become a subordinate to him. This was enough proof of just how powerful Ling Han's strength was. He couldn't help but feel a sense of lingering fear. If he and Ling Han really came to blows, he would definitely be seeking his own humiliation. He hurriedly lowered his head, and became a coward. "Hey, why are you sticking your head in the ground?" Hu Miao asked delicately. He actually dared to look down on Nio's Ling Han. Nio expresses that Nio is very angry, and is going to hit him when he is down. That person did not even dare to say a single word, and only pretended like he had not heard anything. Though this was very embarrassing, it was still much better than being pummeled in public. Ling Han merely smiled, and did not take it to heart. He just looked at that jade-green celestial tree and the majestic mist of purple that was rising from it, which made it look extremely noble. He asked Fu Dong about the origins of this celestial tree, but the latter was not sure either. He had just arrived a month earlier himself, and only knew that the depths of this garden were extremely dangerous. Not one person had managed to barge their way in. "Do you see those damaged weapons there?" Fu Dong pointed at a few weapons that were scattered all around the celestial tree. They were a sword, a saber, a spear, and a halberd, and they were stabbed into the ground. However, every single weapon was already damaged, and their previous glory was concealed. As long as one gets too near, these weapons would show their might, which is very frightening. Fu Dong felt a sense of lingering fear, his face pale. "I have seen it with my own eyes. One person was very confident in his own strength, and wanted to forcefully barge in. As a result, that damaged saber automatically slashed out, its divine light dazzling over 5,000 kilometers, and directly cut that person so badly that both his form and spirit were destroyed." Ling Han nodded. Without protection that was strong enough, this celestial tree would not last until his arrival. "I'll try it out," Ling Han said to the three women. The three women all nodded. They knew that Ling Han's present strength was practically at the Celestial King tier, and added with the might of the Divine Demon Sword, even a First Heaven Celestial King had been chased off. This naturally qualified him to venture in. Fu Dong's expression was also feverish. He, too, was filled with confidence in Ling Han. He was one of the witnesses of the battle between Ling Han and the Blue North King. Though he had not seen much of it, with his strength, he had witnessed with his own eyes how the Blue North King had fled. Was that still not enough? The guy that had previously been scared out of his wits revealed a cold smirk. "He wants to barge in and pluck the fruit? You are just seeking death." Pun! He felt a sudden pain in his head, and was already sprawled down onto the ground. He flew into a rage, and hurriedly got back to his feet again. He turned and saw Hunyo was clenching her little fist, glaring angrily at him. He was just about to flip out when a sudden chill rose up in his heart. Though he had been caught unawares, just how strong did she have to be able to strike him down with a single punch? With this in mind, his fury immediately subsided like floodwaters. He once again dipped his head, and returned to being a coward. Ling Han was completely unconcerned about this kind of trifling matter. He merely stared ahead before striding forwards. His main goal was naturally to retrieve the celestial fruit, but the 4 broken weapons were also within his range of retrieval. Being capable of easily killing an ascending origin tier, these 4 weapons were probably forged from divine metal. Though they were now damaged, they still had powerful might. He was not interested in celestial tools, but divine metal could be swallowed by the divine demon sword, and it could continue its evolution. "Another here to commit suicide? Hee, foolish outsider. He probably thinks that his strength is very great, yet has forgotten that this is the celestial path." As he passed, quite a number of people were sneering, but because they discovered that Ling Han was heading towards the celestial tree, they made no move to stop him. In any case, he would soon be killed, so why should they waste the effort? Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and a terrifying pressure spread out, instantly silencing all of them. These locals all exchanged looks, and they could see the shock and even fear in each other's expressions. How could there possibly be such a strong person in this world? They felt as if they had been glared at by a celestial king, and were almost scared out of their wits. Ling Han withdrew his gaze, and continued onwards. 1. He had just placed a foot within the 30-meter range of the celestial tree, and a dazzling light immediately rose up from the ground. Multiple vein patterns appeared on the ground, and when they joined together, they formed an extremely complex seal. Ling Han was surprised. He discovered that the environment around him had immediately changed. The ruined pillars were now complete and extremely tall. The broken walls were mended, and looked like white jade. Beautiful and ornate designs covered them, emanating a divine air. Luxuriant flowers spread out like silk, leaves as green as jade. This looked like a paradise on earth. Ling Han knew that this was an image of this place from when it had been in its age of prosperity. Unfortunately, something had happened, and this place had become a place of ruins. He exerted the power of time, and attempted to trace history. The scene changed, and the scene from eons ago truly appeared. Chapter 24-27 Fighting a Celestial Tool. Chapter 24-27 Fighting a Celestial Tool. Ling Han saw the scene of this palace at its age of greatest prosperity. There were beautiful palace maids walking in and out, soldiers bursting with exuberant youth patrolling back and forth, and finally, he saw a female celestial king, graceful, elegant, and enchanting. When he focused his eyes on her, this female celestial king actually looked back at him, a confused expression appearing on her face. What great strength! Ling Han was looking at her through time, and it actually managed to draw her notice. Crack! At this moment, a bolt of lightning descended, striking precisely on Ling Han's head. Instantly, everything was cut off. The jade walls, high pillars, and beautiful maids all vanished. That female celestial king was also gone from sight, and everything around returned to what Ling Han had originally seen: damaged, ruined, and miserable. Ling Han was stunned. Though that had not been a heavenly tribulation, it was also the heaven and earth interfering to cause a disturbance. He had glimpsed a powerful female celestial king through the ages, and had drawn the latter's notice. If this continued too long, it could possibly change history. Because that female celestial king was a ninth heaven celestial king. This kind of powerful being only needed a thought, and could make another choice on some important matter, which would very possibly affect history, change history, or even overturn history. The past could only be the past, and could not be changed. The consequences involved would be too wide-ranging. Hence, the heaven and earth interfered, forcefully interrupting the possible contact that he could have had with that female celestial king. Ling Han was now even more curious. Just what great matter was this female celestial king hesitating over at that time? One choice could take her left, and the other would take her right, and it was actually capable of influencing history? Never mind. He shook his head, and continued onwards. Weighing ahead of him, that damaged sword revived. It was entirely entwined by lightning that crackled and popped. Then, it suddenly removed itself from the ground, and floated in midair. The damaged sword did not immediately attack, and only slanted and turned, the tip of the sword pointing straight at Ling Han. It seemed like it was issuing a warning: don't come any closer, or I won't be reserved. Ling Han did not move either, and only felt the aura emanated by this damaged sword. It was very strong. It definitely had the might of the first heaven celestial king tier, but Ling Han had a feeling that this was not the full might of the damaged sword. Once it was fully unleashed, that definitely was not just first heaven. It might be able to insta-kill even a third heaven celestial king. This was very normal. At that time, the female celestial king had been a ninth heaven celestial king. If these 4 celestial tools had all been her precious tools, their might naturally would not be limited to just the first heaven. Reaching 8th heaven or 9th heaven would be within reason as well. Ling Han shook his head internally. He had initially wanted to seize these 4 damaged weapons, and use them to strengthen the divine demon sword, but from the look of things now, it would already be quite impressive if he managed to cross despite their resistance. No wonder even the celestial king here had not retrieved these 4 celestial tools. If it was a celestial seed, that would be one thing. In any case, a celestial king would not be able to use it, either, but these were celestial tools. Even if one did not like this kind of shape, he could melt them down, and reforge them again, forging them into a shape that he would like. It was not that he did not want to, it was that he could not do so. All around, everyone was no longer cultivating. Instead, their eyes were focused on Ling Han. The locals and outsiders had 2 completely different states of emotion. In the eyes of the locals, Ling Han was seeking his own death because even if it was a Celestial King that had come to retrieve the damaged Celestial tools, he could still put up a fight at the beginning, but as the battle continued, the Celestial tools would suddenly unleash their might, and cause severe injury to that Celestial King. And this Celestial King who tried was a third heaven Celestial King at that. From then onwards, this place had become a forbidden land for Celestial Kings. If ascending origin tiers wanted to pluck the celestial fruits, they would definitely be killed by the celestial tools. Meanwhile, the outsiders were filled with confidence in Ling Han. This guy was someone that had even managed to chase a celestial king away. Suppressing a few damaged celestial tools should be no issue for him. And amidst these differing emotions of the spectators, Ling Han took his first step. Instantly, the divine sword unleashed its might. It was like a king that had been challenged, and suddenly sent out a strike. With a sweep of the blade, all heavens could be destroyed. Ling Han covered his whole body with power, and brandished his fists in a counterattack with a roar. Pung! When his fist landed on the sword's blade, whung! A terrifying shock wave reverberated outwards. Pooh! All those who had been swept by the shock wave turned pale, hacking out mouthfuls of blood. Only Hu Niu and the Empress were exempted because they were already close to the height of Pseudo-Celestial King tier. They could just barely sustain the aftermath of a Celestial King tier battle. However, Bewitching Maiden Ro was coughing up blood as well, though she had not spluttered it out. In this exchange, Ling Han slid backwards over 90 meters, creating deep grooves in the ground with his feet, and the damaged sword had also been struck backwards several dozen meters. But even while it was still retreating, it made a comeback, and shot back to its original spot. It was still exuding a frightening aura directly aimed at Ling Han. Ling Han looked down, and there was a trace of blood on his hand. Though the wound was not deep, there was still blood seeping out. The sword, on the other hand, was damaged, but that had been the case to begin with, and aside from that, it was completely unscratched. This was the first time that Ling Han had been at a disadvantage in terms of physique, though his opponent was only a weapon. He immediately made his judgment inwardly. In terms of battle prowess, the damaged sword that had not unleashed its might further was inferior to him, but the celestial tool was practically indestructible. Even a ninth heaven celestial king would find it very, very hard to damage it. In other words, the damaged sword was already invincible by nature. Hence, the best result would be Ling Han forcing the damaged sword into retreat, plucking the celestial fruits, and then successfully retreating himself. It was impossible for him to suppress the celestial tool, because his strength was still inadequate. Even if he truly became a celestial king, the damaged sword could still unleash its might for the second time. That power would be even more frightening, and could wound even a third heaven celestial king. There was no solution to this. Unless Ling Han could be even stronger, and reach fourth heaven, fifth heaven, or an even higher cultivation level. The celestial tool would only be a celestial tool still. Furthermore, it was damaged, so its might would definitely be limited. Ling Han pulled himself together, and walked forwards again. The damaged sword struck once more. A majestic flash of light slashed towards him, shaking the world. Ling Han shook his right hand, and the divine demon's sword was summoned. Even if his present physique was extremely tough, he was still unqualified to clash head-on with a celestial tool. Ding ding ding! The divine demon's sword and the damaged sword clashed endlessly, bursting with a boundless, dazzling light. Ling Han was incredibly aggressive. His left hand continued to use the flow of time, and it would affect either the damaged sword or himself. He had a complete grasp of the initiative, and was beating down on the damaged sword. Everyone was staring dumbfoundedly, especially those locals. They had never seen such a powerful ascending origin tier before. All of them were gaping widely. It was like they had seen a ghost. Meanwhile, the outsiders appeared very proud. These locals actually dared to look down on them. Just see how powerful one of their prodigies could be. After striking at least 1,000 times, the glowing seals on the damaged sword suddenly dimmed. With a PU, it stabbed back into the ground, and made no further move to attack. At first, Ling Han thought that the damaged sword was going to enter into a second state, and explode with even greater might. He had already prepared himself to flee, but a good number of seconds had passed, and the damaged sword was still motionless. Pooh! Right at this moment, the damaged saber beside it flowed, and was similarly entwined in lightning. This was a consecutive battle? Ling Han laughed. With the divine demon sword in hand, what did he have to fear? Let's battle it out. Shio! The damaged saber also shot out of the ground, and recovered by itself. It unleashed a frightening fighting spirit, the power of a celestial king blazing as it launched an offensive at Ling Han. Ling Han moved, sword in hand and completely unafraid. After fighting for around 1,000 exchanges, the damaged saber retreated, and returned to the ground. The damaged spear took its place. Ling Han couldn't help but grimace. This really was a consecutive battle. He released a battle cry, and took the initiative to charge out. No need for so much trouble. All four of you can come at me together! Chapter 24-28 Fate. Chapter 24-28 Fate. Ling Han couldn't be bothered, and directly challenged all four damaged weapons. This naturally was not because he was too arrogant, but rather that he was confident. As long as these four damaged weapons did not unleash their strongest blows, he was completely capable of matching their combined forces. Wang, wang, wang. The other three weapons also revived respectively. The damaged sword, saber, and halberd all floated in the air, forming a line of attack with the damaged spear as they unleashed an offensive on Ling Han. The joined forces of these four weapons would definitely surpass a simple layering of their might. Just think of the past, when the four celestial tools were still in their prime. What celestial king was capable of matching them? How had this place been destroyed? Could it have been the move of a heavenly venerate? Logically, a ninth heaven celestial king could not possibly appear on the celestial path. Then could it be that this was originally a part of the celestial realm, and it was only later that it was split from the former, and swallowed by the celestial path? Or the celestial path itself was within the celestial realm, and there had been no such thing as opening or closing before? These thoughts flashed through Ling Han's mind. At present, he did not have the time to think too much, and could only release battle cries as he battled intensely with the four celestial tools. If the divine demon sword was taken into account as well, there were actually 5 celestial tools here, which was extremely shocking. Ling Han tried his best. He did not use the power of the Dimension Scroll, because he felt that his own power was enough to suppress these 4 celestial tools. Battle, battle, battle! He was fighting to his heart's content. The defense of his opponents far surpassed his, and would not be wounded by him at all, so he could attack without any reservations at all. This was a very good feeling. Ling Han was primarily using body arts to suppress them and various regulations as replenishment. The strength of his battle prowess was chilling. But after only 1,000 moves, the 4 celestial tools ceased attacking at the same time. The seals of light dimmed. Pa, 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 they dropped onto the ground, and this time, they were no longer stabbed slantingly into the ground, but were rather just lying there, as if they had lost all their life. Wang, an intent suddenly entered into Ling Han's mind, and took the form of a human figure. Ling Han was instantly shocked. This was the female celestial king that he had seen in the flow of time. Destined One, the fact that you can see me, and hear these words from me, means that not only do you have outstanding talent, you have also obtained devouring metal, the female celestial king said. This was only a sliver of intent of hers, so she was naturally communicating via divine sense as well. It is possible for you to become a heavenly venerable tier, and these 4 weapons that I have once used can also be fused by the devouring metal, helping it to advance to another stronger level. Senior, may I ask your name? Ling Han asked. Yet the female celestial king did not answer, and continued. On the surface, the celestial realm is peaceful and calm, but in truth, there is danger in all corners. There are terrifying enemies spying on us, and if you can become a heavenly venerate, I hope that you can plow the halls and sweep the pavilions, and resolve the foreign aggressions threatening the celestial realm once and for all. Additionally, my son has just been born, and I was killed. Being unable to watch him grow into a man is truly a regret. If you have the chance to see my son, help me pass on a message. Tell him that I miss him very much. My son's name is Yuan Xing, and the person who has killed me bears the title Jiuwu. When these words fell, the female celestial king's figure disappeared with a tremor. This was only a thought that she had left behind in the celestial tools that had not dispersed. Now that her will had been passed on, she was naturally gone from sight. Yet Ling Han was stunned into speechlessness. It can't be that this female celestial king is the karmic life heavenly venerable's mother, right? It was extremely possible. No matter what, the descendant of a celestial king should be extremely awesome, especially when this female celestial king was already so powerful herself. Then, among the more famous Yuan Shengs that appeared after, there seemed to be only a single karmic life heavenly venerable, right? Furthermore, if that was not the case, when Ling Han had almost crossed the ages, and managed to communicate with this female celestial king, why had the heaven and earth forcefully interrupted them? Because this implicated a heavenly venerate, an existence that surpassed regulations. Once any changes were made to the path of maturity of the karmic life heavenly venerable, a revolutionary change would take place in history. With such a powerful barrage of time, the whole realm could even collapse. Hence, the heaven and earth had to stop them. Moreover, the mother of the karmic life heavenly venerable had been killed by Jiuwu heavenly venerate? Could it be that that old guy had predicted that the karmic life heavenly venerable would affect his future plans, and had thus wanted to get rid of the karmic life heavenly venerable in advance, even before his birth? But even if he was a heavenly venerate, he was unable to fully predict every scene in the future. Thus, he had killed the karmic life heavenly venerable's mother, yet the karmic life heavenly venerable had already been born. As expected, first, there was the heavenly venerate Wudi sniping the elites of the foreign realm, and after came the self-sacrifice of the karmic life heavenly venerable, which delayed the foreign realm for another 8 epochs, proving that the Jiuwu heavenly venerate had not erred by making a move. He had just been slightly too late. This old bastard! Ling Han gritted his teeth in hatred. There were really quite a number of despicable deeds that Jiuwu heavenly venerate had done before. Ling Han himself had been hunted down by him before, and it was 2 times at that. Old grudges and new hatred added together caused Ling Han to grit his teeth involuntarily. Please don't worry, Senior. You are considered my Grand Master as well one. With yours and Master's hatred, added with my own, we have a 3-generation blood feud with the old bastard Jiuwu. I will definitely kill this villain with my own hands, Ling Han murmured. This was not just a word of comfort for the female celestial king, but was also a show of confidence. He would definitely surpass the Jiuwu heavenly venerate, and kill this old bastard. He stretched out his hand in a grab, and the 4 celestial tools all fell into his hand. The intent of the celestial king had dispersed, and these 4 weapons were presently only celestial tools. They could no longer be revived, and were damaged at that. There was no rush to refine them. Ling Han took another step forwards, and arrived in front of the celestial tree. He stretched out a hand, and grabbed out at that celestial fruit. Z! The celestial tree swayed lightly, and the lightning immediately became as dense as a spider's web, and then turned into a bolt of lightning that struck out at him. Ling Han hurriedly parried this blow with a fist. Z! A feeling of electrocution immediately flowed through his body, causing his whole body to tremble. His bones had almost collapsed, even. What a strong attack! Ling Han was slightly surprised. Very rarely would a celestial tree be attack-focused, as they all usually tended to run quickly. However, this celestial tree was different. It did not flee, and was extremely ferocious. Do you think I'm scared of you? Ling Han stretched out his hand again, his body art unleashed to the extreme, a boundless aura spreading out from him. The celestial tree trembled, and that celestial fruit actually fell down. This? Ling Han was speechless. This celestial tree was completely a paper tiger. He had only just slightly revealed his strength, and it cowered, completely showing what a coward was like. However, since the celestial fruit had already been bestowed, Ling Han refrained from being too hard on it, either. He stowed the celestial fruit away, and did not further make things difficult for this celestial tree. Now that this had touched his hand, it could only be ingested by him alone, or could be concocted into an alchemical pill. Using a naturally complete celestial seed to concoct an alchemical pill? That was too wasteful. Moreover, this celestial tree had only borne one fruit, and was also closer to the heart of the celestial path. Clearly, this celestial fruit was also more valuable. Ling Han did not hesitate, and swallowed it directly. Is it delicious? Hunyo came over, practically drooling. She did not feel jealous that Ling Han had obtained an even better celestial seed, but only felt that it was a pity that she was unable to taste this kind of delicacy. Not really. Ling Han gritted his teeth, and multiple flashes of lightning were wreaking havoc in his mouth presently, crackling and popping loudly. Hunyo was instantly amused, and laughed out loudly. She was a glutton, but there was lightning melded into a fruit. Just thinking about it, the taste could not possibly be anything close to delicious. And the people around were all looking at Ling Han enviously. Not only had this guy obtained a complete celestial seed, for damaged celestial tools had even entered his pockets. Even though these celestial tools were damaged, they could be returned to the furnace and reforged, and any one of them could unleash their divine might once again. Chapter 24-29 Killing a Celestial King. Chapter 24-29 Killing a Celestial King. Though the celestial fruit had already been plucked, some people had still stayed behind. This was because the celestial tree was still there, slivers of dense celestial chi emanating from it. Celestial seed shards were also contained within, and they similarly were extremely beneficial. Ling Han was not interested in staying much longer here though. He and the three women left the palace hall, and arrived in the mountains, continuing their journey by carriage. He related the message that had been passed through the divine sense of the female celestial king to the three women, and the empress and the others were all very shocked by this. There really were such coincidences in this world. While Ling Han had the divine demon sword fused with the celestial tools to improve its grade, he took a peek into his mind. He presently had 2 celestial seed marks, and they both could form celestial seeds. Ling Han did not hesitate at all, and nurtured the first mark so that it truly became a celestial seed because this was something that he was planning to use for an alchemical pill. And in this process, he could study all the secrets of this mark and grasp its essence. At the end, he would gather the essence of countless celestial seed marks, and form a truly flawless and perfect celestial seed. Celestial seed was not a solid object, but rather the seed of great Tao and an appreciation of Tao. The Empress and the others followed suit. They were presently nurturing the celestial seed marks in their minds first, and would trade it for a better one when they came upon one. Without a better one, when the 10,000-year deadline arrived, they would complete their breakthrough with this celestial seed mark. After all, it was a complete celestial seed, and using it to break through would mean that their battle prowess would definitely not be weak. The carriage swayed back and forth, and they set out towards the next city. In only over a dozen days, the divine demon sword had completely refined all 4 damaged weapons. On the surface, there didn't seem to be any change at all, but when Ling Han held it in his grasp, he got a clear feeling. The divine demon sword had become slightly stronger. It was mainly that the gulf between Celestial King Tyr and Heavenly Venerable Tyr was too wide, and it was possible that the divine demon sword needed several hundred to over 1,000 portions of divine metal to truly complete a qualitative change, but as long as it fused with an additional piece of divine metal, it would definitely enjoy a slight boost. But on the matter of nurturing their celestial seed marks, none of the 4 had achieved any great breakthrough. Even if they had exerted time acceleration effects on themselves, they needed at least 10 years of real time to develop their celestial seed mark for it to become a celestial seed. As they journeyed, the carriage came to an abrupt stop. "Greetings, lords!" The shaky voice of the coachman rang out from outside. Ling Han opened the carriage doors, and saw that the coachman was practically lying prostrate on the ground, sprawled out, and 7 men were standing ahead of them, arms crossed behind their backs. All of them were entwined in multicolored light, and one of them was precisely the blue North Celestial King. He had vanished for such a long time. As it turned out, he had gone to seek out help. Though Ling Han was only in the ascending origin tier, his own battle prowess was already at the Celestial King tier, and added with the aid of the Divine Demon's Sword, 2 to 3 First Heaven Celestial Kings really weren't enough to take him down. Hence, the Blue North Celestial King could only journey further and get more help. Why were they all First Heaven Celestial Kings? If a Second Heaven Celestial King moved, wouldn't it be an easy move to suppress Ling Han? Very simple. If he went to seek out a Second Heaven Celestial King, the Blue North Celestial King would lose all say, and what he most desperately hoped to obtain was Ling Han's spirit to pluck out the secret to his inconceivable strength. Ling Han's eyes swept over them, and a disdainful expression appeared on his face. As great and noble Celestial Kings, you actually have to use an advantage in numbers to win. Hee, you guys are really honorable. When these words fell, all 7 great Celestial Kings looked furious. A mere ascending origin tier actually dared insult them to their faces? How outrageously brazen! This truly is a guy that doesn't know the rules, a Celestial King declared coldly. Ling Han looked towards him. This Celestial King was dressed in long purple robes, and had the appearance of a middle-aged man. He was lanky and tall in built, with a powerful and dominant bearing. Ling Han smiled faintly. Old geezer, do you know how to talk like a human being? The purple-robed Celestial King couldn't stop his eyes from widening. Brat, what did you say? Old geezer, not only can you not speak well, even your ears have a problem? Ling Han scoffed. The other party had clearly come to snipe him, so what need was there to be polite any longer? There is no need to drop to his level. We should just take him down, the Blue North Celestial King said impatiently. He still remembered how he had fled in disgrace, and how his own manor had been ransacked entirely by Ling Han. When he heard about this, he had really been close to passing out in fury. This was an extraordinarily great humiliation he had never experienced. Brother Blue North, is this boy really so freakish? A Celestial King asked. They really could not believe it. A mere ascending origin tier was actually capable of matching a Celestial King. Even though the Blue North Celestial King repeatedly said that this was not a joke, he still could not accept it. That's right. The Blue North Celestial King nodded solemnly. If that had not been the case, would he have needed to get 6 helpers? Did they think that he did not want his pride? Ling Han stared at the Blue North Celestial King, and with a thought, the Divine Demon's Sword was already grasped in his hand. His legs slightly bent, and he began storing up power. This is that celestial tool? The Celestial King's eyes were all focused on the Divine Demon's Sword, and their gazes were all filled with covetous desire. The Blue North Celestial King nodded. This is indeed a celestial tool. I am not concerned with how you divide this celestial tool among yourselves, brothers, as long as you hand this boy over to me. Agreed. The other Celestial Kings all nodded. Shwa! Right at this moment, Ling Han had finished accumulating power, and with a sudden toss of his right hand, the Divine Demon's Sword shot out like an arrow, flying rapidly towards the Blue North Celestial King. This toss had incorporated all of Ling Han's power, and was further boosted with the regulations of time, so its speed had reached an indescribable level. More importantly, after the Divine Demon's Sword had absorbed the 4 damaged weapons, it now actually possessed new might. In a mere flash, the Divine Demon's Sword traversed through space, and arrived in front of the Blue North Celestial King, as if it had ignored all matters of distance. The Blue North Celestial King was petrified. If this was any other weapon or even a punch from another Celestial King flying towards him, he would be confident enough that he could preserve his life. It was only a matter of how serious his injuries would be. However, the Divine Demon's Sword was too terrifying, and he had already experienced a loss before due to its might. He unleashed a roar. He no longer had any time to flee, and as he tried his best to bend backwards, he focused all his power into his forehead to defend against this strike. Pooh! The divine demon sword streaked past, and directly sank into the blue North Celestial King's forehead. This stab went all the way to the end, and left only the hilt that was still sticking out of his forehead. This Celestial King stumbled, his face bearing an expression of absolute disbelief. It had only just been a short period of time, and he had actually been insta-killed with a single sword strike from Ling Han? Ping! He collapsed onto the ground loudly. Instantly, the heaven and earth paled. A shower of blood rained copiously, exuding endless grief. A celestial king had died, and the heaven and earth grieved. The other 6 celestial kings were dumbfounded. Who could have imagined that Ling Han would move so decisively? He was clearly being surrounded by 7 great celestial kings, yet actually dared to take the initiative to make the first move, and it was such a fierce, domineering assault at that. He had killed the celestial king with a single sword strike. They went through some slight recollection, and felt that though Ling Han's toss was filled with power, it could only catch a celestial king off guard, at most. The true deadly weapon was the celestial tool itself. It had directly transmigrated through space, its speed so fast that even a celestial king could not react in time. The Blue North Celestial King had really died for nothing. All 6 great celestial kings felt a sympathy that arose from seeing one of their peers killed in such a manner. In terms of strength, the Blue North Celestial King was definitely in no way inferior to Ling Han, yet he had still been killed with a single strike, which was something that even now, they found a little hard to accept. This divine sword is too extraordinary! But it was only a single instant, and an intense greed rose up in all 6 great celestial kings. In the hands of an ascending origin tier, this divine sword was already so powerful. Then, if it was them wielding it, just how powerful would its might be? Chapter 2430 Pseudo-Celestial King. Chapter 2430 Pseudo-Celestial King. The 6 great celestial kings all released battle cries, and pounced towards the corpse of the Blue North Celestial King at practically the same time. They naturally did not have their eye on what the Blue North Celestial King would have left behind, but rather wanted to snatch the divine demon's sword that was still stabbed into his forehead. This was really a war of titans, all using their respective tricks. The 6 great celestial kings all used all the means at their disposal to ensure that they would be the first to reach it. Ling Han shook his head. "What are you guys scrambling around for?" With a hook of his finger, Xiao, the divine demon sword floated by itself, the blade of the sword exuding a terrifying might. It was like a celestial king unleashing his might. From the angle of a tool, the divine demon sword presently was only an 8-star pseudo-celestial tool, but even so, if Ling Han wanted to command it to move, it naturally was also a small matter. But in terms of sharpness, the divine demon sword was really too frightening. It had drunk the blood of celestial kings, refined divine metal, and as its murderous aura seeped out, even a celestial king would feel wary. As expected, the divine demon sword floated into the air, and wherever the tip of the blade pointed, every single celestial king felt a chill rise up in their hearts. Involuntarily, they took a step back. With a thought, the divine demon sword immediately shot back towards Ling Han. "Pa!" He stretched out a hand and grabbed it, and he now held the divine demon sword once more. He smiled calmly. "Who else wants to commit suicide?" The 6 great celestial kings all looked livid. The kind of might that the divine demon sword could unleash in Ling Han's hands was something that they had just witnessed with their own eyes, and if they were being honest, if this sword had been shot towards them, who would have had the confidence that they could manage to block it? Not even a single one. Hence, they all rapidly drew out the distance, and it was only in this manner would they feel a sense of security. Great and noble celestial kings, and it was a 6-against-1 battle at that, and they were actually on the defensive? It could not be helped. Who asked Ling Han to hold such a powerful weapon? Actually, the 6 celestial kings did not think that their combined forces would not be able to suppress Ling Han. As long as all 6 of them moved at once, Ling Han would only be able to handle one, at most, and were 5 celestial kings still not enough to suppress a single ascending origin tier? But the problem was, who would be willing to become the person to make the sacrifice? If Ling Han could read their thoughts, he would definitely scoff. Though his battle prowess had just barely reached the Celestial King tier, that was the same for his defense. So what if 5 Celestial Kings barraged him at the same time? To cause a serious or even fatal blow to him was definitely not something that could be done in 2 or 3 moves. The 6 great Celestial Kings were all gloomy. At first, they had thought that it was too much of a fuss for 7 great Celestial Kings to join forces for the sake of a mere ascending origin tier, but they hadn't even started fighting, and already one of their number was killed by Ling Han. And now, they fell into such an embarrassing situation. How could they bear this? Faced with Ling Han's disdain, they could say nothing to refute him. "Are we fighting or not? If not, then don't block the way," Ling Han stated evenly. Though these words weren't very polite, compared with his previous words, this line was much better. The 6 great Celestial Kings exchanged looks, and all of them shook their heads because none of them wanted to be the one to sacrifice themselves for the benefit of the others. Hence, their alliance naturally could not be established. Xiao, 1 Celestial King, was the first to leave, which was followed by the second, the third, and in a mere instant, all 6 Celestial Kings had left. Ling Han did not become careless. The Divine Demon Sword was too desirable. Those 6 Celestial Kings would definitely not give up the matter so easily. They would definitely lurk in a dark corner somewhere, looking for a chance to make their move. They were Celestial Kings, the strongest beings of the Celestial Realm, and were equals to regulations themselves. Who would dare underestimate them? "Continue the journey?" Ling Han said calmly to the coachman. "Yes, yes." The coachman was practically astounded by Ling Han now. He had shot a Celestial King to death with a single strike, and sent other 6 Celestial Kings into leaving. This battle achievement was practically blinding. He hurriedly prompted the carriage, respectful to the extreme. Ling Han swept a glance at the corpse of the Blue North Celestial King, and stretched out his hands to search for his belongings. As for the body itself, he did not touch it. After all, the Blue North Celestial King was a human. Ling Han felt that using the former's blood to improve himself was a bit strange, and could not be accepted. This was unlike the ancestral kings of the foreign realm. He did not feel any kind of psychological guilt from using theirs. The carriage forged onwards, and arrived at the next city a few months later. However, there were no celestial fruits that just happened to ripen here. Hence, they continued their journey, heading towards the next city. It seemed like their luck had become bad. They had traveled to a few cities in succession, and still had not encountered the ripening of celestial fruits, and the time they had spent on the journey was already as long as 7 years. After reaching the next city, Ling Han decided to have the carriage stop, and no longer journey onwards. They found an inn, and began to nurture their celestial seed with all their efforts, increasing their own battle prowess. In the blink of an eye, another 3 years had already passed. Ling Han and the others had already developed the celestial seed mark, and had also obtained all the secrets contained within. As long as they pushed it just that slightest bit furthermore, they would be able to advance into the Celestial King tier. At this time, all of them stopped. They had further aspirations. The first celestial seed was far from reaching the level of perfection, and was not suitable to become their celestial seed. Ling Han began pill concoction. He had long since prepared the rest of the ingredients. The only thing missing had been the celestial seed. Before coming to the celestial path, Ling Han had only planned on collecting celestial seed shards and slowly accumulating them into a complete celestial seed, after which he would concoct a celestial king pill. Who could have imagined that they would actually be so lucky for all of them to have a complete celestial seed each so quickly, and with one extra at that. This was already enough to be used to concoct the Celestial King pill. This was enough to make the majority of future Celestial Kings die of envy, because if one ingested the Celestial King pill, their accomplishments would be eternally limited to the first heaven. This was too wasteful. Yet Ling Han was unconcerned. He took out the first celestial seed. It was no longer a solid object, but rather a complete spiritual mark. No wonder one would only be limited to the first heaven through ingesting the Celestial King pill. That was because what was being branded was the understanding of great Tao belonging to another person, so how could they possibly take another step further, and produce a second seed? Under time acceleration effects, Ling Han completed the concoction of the Celestial King pill only half a day later. He had succeeded, thought the completed pill had just barely attained 2 stars. He had almost failed. But at his first attempt concocting a Celestial King pill, and one that was 5-star level at that, he succeeded. This was enough to show just how amazing Ling Han's skill in alchemy was. They ended their short period of seclusion, and continued onwards. Their stopover this time was definitely worth it, not because Ling Han had concocted the Celestial King pill, but because a great improvement had taken place in the strength of the Empress and the others. They had officially leaped into Pseudo-Celestial King tier. Ling Han had fought them before. Without using any other methods, the Empress and Hunyo's vitality index could reach 4,800 points, and after consuming Crimson Demonic Earth, their vitality index could draw extremely close to 5,000, but it was still that little bit away. And in the case of Bewitching Maiden Row, under normal conditions, her vitality index was around 4,700, and it would soar to 4,900 after consuming Crimson Demonic Earth, which was also very powerful. Now that their battle prowess had increased, they could go and obtain better celestial seeds. They realized that if that had not been the case, aside from someone who had freakish luck like Ling Han, who first became the overlord of a minor realm, then encountered Wally, and obtained the Dimension Scroll, allowing him to extract void particle energy, and thus push his body art to the height of the Celestial King tier, the vitality index of other 7G women would have been 4,700 at most. And this was taking the Crimson Demonic Earth into account as well. But with this kind of stepping stone now, there was now the possibility of obtaining a perfect celestial seed. They set out once more, and arrived at the next city, and it was here that Ling Han discovered the cultivators from the Western Celestial Realm. It was not that they could only meet cultivators from the Western Celestial Realm after having already traveled half the journey, but rather that there was not too much deviation after both sides entered into the celestial path, and that was why they were only able to meet here. Chapter 2431 Wudi. Chapter 2431 Wudi. After each taking their own path, the journeys of the cultivators from the Eastern and Western Celestial Realm all converged here. This place was called Splendor City, and it was guarded by an experienced celestial king who had the title of Splendor. He was at the first heaven, though it was unknown whether he was accompanied by another celestial king called Wealth One. Ling Han kept a low profile. He was sure that Ji Wuming, Jiao Lan, and the other monarch stars had already obtained low-level celestial seeds, allowing them to cultivate to the Pseudo-Celestial King tier. In other words, their strength could now rival that of the Empress and Hunyo. If they further ingested the Crimson Demonic Earth, they could essentially be regarded as celestial kings already. He couldn't underestimate them. If he wanted to compete with them, he had to be ruthless, accurate, and swift. The 4 of them started to move quicker as they asked for information around the city. They discovered that there was indeed a celestial tree near the city. Moreover, the fruits of this tree were already nearing ripeness. However, the Splendor Celestial King had a son who wasn't very successful. After huge efforts, he had only just reached the peak stage of the consummate level of the Ascending Origin tier. His father cared for his son greatly, so he was intent on obtaining a complete celestial seed for him no matter what. Disregarding whether one could obtain celestial fruits for someone else or not, if others wanted to fight for the celestial fruits, they would have to go through the Splendor Celestial King first. Ling Han and the others were all brimming with confidence. Even though their vitality indices were all a little shy of the Celestial King tier, they were 4 people in total, so just how powerful would their combined strength be? Moreover, Ling Han also possessed a deadly weapon in the Divine Demon Sword. After learning of the Celestial Tree's location, they started to head toward it. In any case, the Splendor Celestial King wasn't shockingly domineering, so he still allowed others to cultivate in the vicinity of the Celestial Tree such that they could absorb some of the fragrance of the celestial fruit. After several hours, Ling Han and the others arrived on the bank of a lake that was situated in a plain. The lake wasn't large, and it was only 300 meters in diameter. There was a white lotus in the center of the lake, and around 3 meters of it sat above the water. Instead of calling it a lotus, it was much more apt to call it a tree. The white lotus had bloomed long ago, so it had already produced a seed pod that was as brilliant green as jade. However, it had only produced a single lotus seed, the sharp head of which looked like flowing gold. It radiated with a blinding glow. At a rough glance, this lotus seed was around 1 foot long. In fact, one could view it as a cob of corn. The banks of the lake were dotted with people, all of whom were absorbing the fragrance of the lotus seed. They would use this fragrance to condense a celestial seed within their bodies. However, where was the Splendor-Celestial King? Ling Han glanced around, but he didn't find what he was looking for. Celestial kings were extremely unique, so they would stick out like a dazzling star no matter where they stood. He would have been able to locate him in a single glance. Right at this moment. Whoosh! A streak of black tore through the sky before coming to a halt above the lake, transforming into the figure of a middle-aged man. He was tall and slender, and dressed in a flowing gray robe. He radiated a profoundly powerful aura. Most importantly, a ring of fantastic iridescent light pulsated around him, making it seem as if he were one with heaven and earth. It was as if he were the heavens, and the heavens were him. His existence was such that no one dared to even fathom standing up against him. After all, how could one rival heaven and earth? He was none other than the Splendor-Celestial King. Ling Han's pupils contracted. This Splendor-Celestial King was even more powerful than the Blue North Celestial King. In fact, he was even more powerful than the 6 Celestial Kings that Blue North Celestial King had called over combined. This person had reached the pinnacle of the first heaven. His next step was to evolve with the help of a celestial fruit to advance to the second heaven. There were 9 heavens in Celestial King tier, and each step forward was like ascending the heavens. Whoosh! Another person descended. This was a wild-looking youth whose raven black hair billowed with the wind. There was blood in the corners of his eyes, yet he paid absolutely no heed to this. He roared with laughter as he said, "Lord Celestial King, your strength is indeed extraordinary. How admirable!" Upon hearing this, commotion immediately rippled through the crowd of people around the lake. This person spoke with such arrogance. Even though he referred to the Splendor-Celestial King as Lord, his words didn't carry any semblance of respect at all. It was as if the two of them were on equal standing. However, one had to realize that this youth was only at the ascending origin tier. Ling Han was slightly astonished. It was clear that this youth had challenged the Splendor-Celestial King just then. Moreover, the youth had definitely lost, though he had only suffered some minor injuries. This was proof enough of his extraordinary strength. When did such a person appear in the celestial realm? "You're indeed extraordinary," the Splendor-Celestial King said in a solemn voice. "Lord Celestial King, heaven and earth possess their regulations. It's simply impossible for you to obtain this celestial seed. Why stubbornly insist on challenging heaven and earth? The path of celestial kings is to abide by the commands of the heavens. One must rival the will of the heavens," the youth said. Everyone was astonished. These words wouldn't have sounded out of place if a 9th heaven celestial king had uttered them. However, coming from a measly ascending origin tier elite? How arrogant was he to speak like this? Perhaps he believed that he had the right to school celestial kings. Just who in the world did he think he was? However, the Splendor-Celestial King wasn't enraged. Instead, he nodded and said, "The strength of your esteemed father rivals that of heaven and earth. I gather that this is his comprehension?" "Indeed," the youth replied with a smile. The Splendor-Celestial King fell silent for a brief moment before saying, "Fine. I'll treat this as an act of goodwill and leave this celestial seed to you. When you meet your esteemed father, please greet him for me." "Definitely," the youth said with a beaming smile as he bowed in respect. The Splendor-Celestial King flicked his sleeves before tearing through space and instantly disappearing from above the lake. Gasp! Upon seeing this, everyone felt numb with shock. Who could have imagined this? This youth had actually convinced the Splendor-Celestial King to give up on the celestial seed? With just a few words? No, no, no. How could a few words have achieved this? On the one hand, the youth was indeed very powerful. He had fought against the Splendor-Celestial King just then, and his ability to make it out alive was already proof enough of his strength. On the other hand, his background was definitely also shocking. It was because of this that the Splendor-Celestial King had been willing to yield. Just who in the world was this youth? I've heard from others that there's a freak among the outsiders. Not long ago, he even defeated the Blue North Celestial King. I didn't believe this before, but now I believe it. If I recall correctly, this freak is called Ling something. Ling Han. Yes, that's right. That's his name. This person is Ling Han? Everyone was engaged in spirited discussions. However, they had misrecognized this youth as Ling Han. The youth could naturally hear this, and his expression immediately fell dark. My name is Wudi 1. I'm not some random trash called Ling Han. What? He's not Ling Han? Commotion rippled through the crowd again. In other words, there was more than one freak in the celestial realm this time? A baleful expression spread across the Empress' face. This person actually dared to speak about her man like this? She strode forward, unleashing her profound aura that made her appear like a paramount goddess who peered down at the mere mortals. Pun pun pun! Her raging aura instantly slammed into the people around her, sending them flying. So what if they were at the pinnacle of the ascending origin tier? Before a mighty Pseudo-Celestial King, they were nothing but trash. Everyone was stunned to the core. Who in the world was this woman? She was as beautiful as a celestial maiden, and she was as mighty as a domineering emperor. Moreover, her strength was so overwhelming that it made them quake in fear. Wudi frowned upon seeing this. However, his brows quickly relaxed, and he said, Who would have thought? In such a short amount of time, someone has already cultivated to the Pseudo-Celestial King tier. You're just like me, aren't you? You're unwilling to ascend using an inferior celestial seed, so you want to obtain a more perfect celestial seed. Ha ha! I like you! The Empress humphed coldly as she lashed out with her right hand. Boom! It was as if heaven were collapsing and earth were crumbling. It was as if the sun were dying and the moon were extinguishing. At this moment, her fury was unstoppable. This person actually dared to slander her man? He deserved death. Whoosh! Another figure dashed forward, throwing a punch at Wudi. This was none other than Hunyo. In her eyes, there was no such thing as rules and regulations. What one-on-one? Did this have anything to do with her? Nyo's Ling Han couldn't be humiliated by others. The two women unleashed their profound might, attacking Wudi in unison. They rarely teamed up, but after being around each other for so long, they had naturally developed some tacit understanding. Thus, their combined strength was unexpectedly powerful. Chapter 2432 Clash of Celestial Tools. Chapter 2432 Clash of Celestial Tools. Wudi was greatly astonished. The appearance of the Empress had already surprised him greatly. Now, however, another young woman who could rival the Empress had actually appeared. He was naturally as astonished as could be. These prodigies. There were far too many of them, no. He was supremely confident in himself, and he regarded himself as a peerless individual with no rivals. Fortunately, the Empress was a woman, and she was more so breathtakingly beautiful and noble. This satisfied him greatly. If he took her as his wife, wouldn't they then become a family? And now another had come? Fortunately, this was also a woman. He unleashed a roar as he swung his fists and met their attacks. He didn't fear them at all. Pun pun pun! The three of them became locked in an intense battle. With just a single glance, Ling Han could already confirm that their battle prowess was all around 4,800 points. Among Pseudo-Celestial Kings, this was already an outstanding result. In fact, it was only because they were monarch stars that they could reach this height. Thus, either side could gain an advantage over the other. If Wudi summoned a celestial tool or whatnot, perhaps he would immediately achieve victory. However, Wudi kept refraining from unleashing a trump card. He continued to exchange blows with the two women. However, how could this rival the combined power of the Empress and Hunyo? Wudi gradually fell to a disadvantage. Everyone was rendered speechless with shock. Just then, Wudi had been extremely domineering, even managing to persuade the Celestial King to leave. Now, however, he was actually on the back foot. Even though the two women had teamed up, if their strength weren't up to par, there was no way they could have achieved this. If they weren't powerful enough, even dozens or hundreds of them wouldn't have been enough. Heavens! Just how many supreme freaks were on the celestial path? Even though Wudi was on the back foot, he didn't show any signs of panic at all. Instead, he roared with laughter, appearing wild and domineering. At this moment, he finally retrieved some crimson demonic earth, ingesting it with a gulp. A devastating aura instantly shook the surroundings. He was about to ascend to a new height. The Empress and Hunyo didn't dare to underestimate him. They both hurriedly retrieved and ingested crimson demonic earth. In this world, only Linghan would be capable of battling against Celestial King tier elites without ingesting crimson demonic earth. Boom! The auras of the three people were like a tsunami, and it was as if they were all going to ascend to the Celestial King tier. They continued to do battle. Regardless of how powerful they had been just then, they had all been slightly short of reaching the Celestial King tier. After ingesting the crimson demonic earth, however, it would still be impossible for their vitality index to surpass 5,000. In other words, the greater one's battle prowess, the smaller the buff provided by the crimson demonic earth. The battle prowess of the three people had all been 4,800 to begin with, so theoretically speaking, this number should have exceeded 5,000 after ingesting the crimson demonic earth. Thus, their battle prowess was all identical at this moment. They were all at 4999. Fighting 2 against 1, the Empress and Hunyo naturally possessed the upper hand. They were in full control of the battle. Detestable! Wudi roared. A purple streak suddenly rushed toward him. Whoosh! The Empress and Hunyo were instantly pushed back. This was a golden purple staff that was decorated with symbols. It radiated with an aura of age, yet it more so unleashed a sense of profound pressure. It was as if a paramount celestial king were about to step out from within the staff, crushing all opponents in his way. Celestial tool. This was definitely a celestial tool. Moreover, it was a celestial tool forged by a high-level celestial king. Perhaps it couldn't unleash its full might in Wudi's hands, but it would still be more than powerful enough to stun pseudo-celestial kings. They wouldn't dare to cross this celestial tool rashly. Hunyo humphed and said, "How shameless! You can't defeat us, so you're summoning a celestial tool. Nyo looks down on you." Everyone was rendered speechless. They had already broken the rules by challenging him 2-on-1, yet she was now admonishing him for using a celestial tool? However, the Empress and Hunyo were far too beautiful, so beautiful that no one could bring themselves to blame them. They could only feel that this young lady was adorable and mischievous, and they all stood behind her in support. Indeed! As a man, you actually need to rely on a weapon? Is this anything to be proud of? And it's even a celestial tool! I look down on you! How disdainful! Wudi was about to explode in anger. Why don't you people try to battle against two people who are just as powerful as you? If he could rival them, he naturally wouldn't have wanted to summon a celestial tool. Fuck. This was a bunch of armchair commentators. Linghan also frowned upon seeing this. The Empress and Hunyo were just a step away from advancing to the Celestial King tier. It was indeed time for him to equip them with celestial tools. Otherwise, if they came across opponents who were armed with celestial tools, they would definitely be at a huge disadvantage. At the very least, they would be extremely limited in how they could fight. The next time I obtain celestial tools and divine metal, I won't feed it to the divine demon's sword, Linghan thought to himself. Ugly woman, move aside! Let Nyo deal with him, Hunyo said to the Empress. If they fought 1-on-1, Wudi would most likely be too proud to use a weapon. However, the Empress completely ignored Hunyeo. Instead, she reached over to Ling Han. Ling Han understood what she wanted, and with a shake of his arm, he immediately tossed the divine demon's sword toward her. The Empress caught the sword. She then turned around to glance at Hunyeo, saying, "Little girl, don't stand here and block me." "Wayaya!" Hunyeo stomped her feet in anger. This woman was far too despicable. Everyone was rendered speechless by this scene. Just then, the two women had still been fighting side by side. Now, however, they were actually arguing with each other. Were they sure they weren't messing around? Hunyeo angrily left the battlefield. With their strengths identical, the situation would become far too dangerous for her if everyone else had a celestial tool. She was truly eager for battle, and she was truly eager to play. However, she wasn't stupid at all. "Ling Han, Neo also wants a celestial tool," Hunyeo said as she clung to Ling Han's arm and made eyes at him. Ling Han couldn't help but feel goosebumps. It was fine if Hunyeo tried to come off as pure and innocent, as she simply needed to be herself. However, her trying to act seductive was truly a frightening scene. He patted her small cheek and said, "All right, the next time I obtain a celestial tool or divine metal, I'll definitely forge one for you." Only upon hearing this did Hunyeo nod in satisfaction. She continued to hug Ling Han's arm, an expression of happiness on her face. The surrounding people were all filled with envy. Even though Hunyeo seemed slightly unreliable, just how beautiful was she? Moreover, they had all witnessed her strength just then. She had yet to reach the Celestial King tier, yet she already possessed strength that could rival Celestial Kings. To be partners with such a beauty, how could they not be envious and jealous? Ling Han simply wore a faint smile as he endearingly patted Hunyeo's head. He then turned his attention to the sky, where the intense battle between the Empress and Wudi had begun. Clang, clang, clang! The celestial tools clashed, unleashing bursts of blinding light. Moreover, the collisions were so loud that they were about to burst everyone's eardrums. Others couldn't see clearly, but Ling Han didn't have any trouble at all. This was because his body arts were far too powerful. The Empress hadn't gained an upper hand. However, she hadn't been pushed to her back foot either. Their battle prowess was far too close, and they more so both possessed celestial tools. Thus, victory would simply be decided by their performance. It wasn't long before they exchanged 1,000 blows. At this moment, both their auras started to weaken. The effects of the crimson demonic earth were about to pass. They both retreated 300 meters, taking a short break from battle. "Celestial Maiden, there's no animosity between us, and we've already sparred our fill. Why don't we shake hands and talk peace? How about we discuss cultivation over some tea?" Wudi said as he wore what he believed to be his most dazzling smile. The more he looked at the Empress, the more he liked her. However, the Empress wore an ice-cold expression as she pointed at Ling Han and said, "Kowtow and apologize to my husband. Then I can consider allowing you to die a more painless death." Gasp! Everyone gasped upon hearing this. This woman was far too domineering. However, they quickly realized that this aura of dominance was a perfect match for her disposition. Wudi wore a confused expression. Since when had he offended her husband? However, after some careful thought, he immediately came to a realization. He wore a baleful expression as he looked toward Ling Han, saying, "So, it turns out that you're Ling Han." Chapter 2433 Meaningless Name. Chapter 2433 Meaningless Name. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You recognize me? I didn't before, and I had only heard about some arrogant and haughty person who would rely on their fortunes to even disrespect heavenly venerates," Wudi said with a cold chuckle. "I already became invincible several epochs ago, so in my eyes, you're nothing but trash." Hunyeo couldn't help but giggle upon hearing this. "Keep bullsh*** ting, why don't you? A few epochs ago, you hadn't even become a celestial king yet. Who believes you?" Wudi was brimming with pride, and he said, "I was born 7 epochs ago, and I've already been invincible among the ascending origin tier for a very long time. However, my father determined that there would be an astonishing opportunity on this specific celestial path, so he sealed me away, waiting for this day to come. Who's your father? Ling Han asked. As if expecting this question, Wudi puffed his chest out and answered, The Imperial Void Celestial King! Everyone wore an expression of realization upon hearing this. Looks of respect and reverence spread across their faces. In the past, few people had known about the existence of heavenly venerates. However, everyone had known about the most powerful celestial kings. For example, the strength of the Imperial Void Celestial King definitely ranked in the top 3. Ling Han scoffed upon hearing this. So it's that old bastard. Wudi was instantly enraged. He pointed at Ling Han, and a baleful killing intent surged around his body. Is he not? Ling Han asked calmly. He picks on the weak, and he's as shameless as can be. If I ascend to the 9th heaven, I'll definitely behead him and use his head as a soccer ball. You're seeking death! Wudi roared. He immediately lunged at Ling Han, swinging his staff at his head. A sheet of purple light covered the air, causing the entire lake to ripple. However, no uncontrollable waves appeared. This was a lake that could birth celestial seeds, so it was naturally far from ordinary. Your sword! With a powerful toss, the Empress immediately launched the divine demon sword toward Ling Han. Ling Han reached out with his right hand to catch the sword. Meanwhile, his left hand had already swung toward Wudi. You actually dared to challenge me with your measly strength? The regulations of space fluctuated, and Wudi was instantly restrained. The effects of the crimson demonic earth had almost completely worn off, and his battle prowess had already fallen back to just over 4,800. Meanwhile, Ling Han's battle prowess was at 4,900, so he naturally possessed a crushing advantage over his opponent. He suppressed Wudi with absolute ease. Wudi unleashed a violent roar, and the celestial tool in his hand instantly released a brilliant glow. Bursts of purple aura swirled around him. Pun! The regulations of space shattered, allowing Wudi to furiously charge forward. His celestial tool had carved a path for him, and he was now protected by a sheen of purple light. It was as if no attack could hit him. This was the might of celestial tools. Ling Han could suppress Wudi, but he couldn't suppress his celestial tool. As long as the celestial tool could continue to unleash its might, Wudi would be unaffected by Ling Han's attacks. Thus, even though Wudi couldn't unleash the full might of this celestial tool, just being able to use this ability alone already made him extremely frightening. Ling Han smiled faintly. He had already put on that Celestial King to ring. He hadn't fed it to the divine demon sword, because he had felt like it might come in handy. Refining it would have been a waste. Moreover, it didn't contain much material, either, so it would have been little help to the divine demon sword. He threw a punch at the golden purple staff. Pun! There was a loud boom as a shock wave exploded outward, tearing apart space. This shock wave then rippled outward, violently blasting apart everything in its way. Wudi was forced to retreat several hundred meters. Blood poured from his shaking hands. He wasn't shaking because he was afraid, but rather because of the tremendous force of the collision. He wore an expression of shock. He had actually been overpowered by Ling Han. One had to realize that Ling Han had yet to activate his body arts. Otherwise, his Celestial King tier strength might have directly blasted the staff into Wudi's head, instantly obliterating his mind. Ling Han retrieved his fist. The ring was small, yet it was able to block the terrifying destructive power of celestial tools. In any case, these celestial tools couldn't unleash their full might, so what was there to be afraid of? How's that? Ling Han asked. Wudi gritted his teeth in reply. Right now, he was unable to ingest any more crimson demonic earth. After all, ingesting it in quick succession would be an act of self-harm, or even suicide. Moreover, he understood that Ling Han was even more powerful than him. The rumors weren't false. This young man was unbelievably terrifying. No wonder his father had warned him to be careful if he came across Ling Han. However, if he ingested the crimson demonic earth, what did it matter that Ling Han was powerful? At the most, his strength could only approach that of celestial kings. It would be unable to surpass this level. Thus, there was absolutely no need for him to be afraid of Ling Han. As long as he had enough time, he could once again ingest some crimson demonic earth. However, Ling Han had no intention of wasting time. He glanced at the golden purple staff with a smile, and said, "This celestial tool is fairly decent." "Humph! Are you worthy enough to covet a celestial tool once used by my father?" Wudi said in disdain. He channeled his source power, rapidly healing his wounds. The Imperial Void Celestial King was incredibly powerful, and he had more so mastered many regulations. Celestial tools such as this staff had all been forged while he had been comprehending the regulations of metal. Now, however, there was already no need for the Imperial Void Celestial King to use celestial tools. This was because no celestial tool could match his strength. Meanwhile, in terms of heavenly venerate tools, firstly, he didn't possess any devouring metal. Secondly, he didn't have the skill to forge such tools. Ling Han grinned with confidence, saying, "Before long I'll force that old geezer Imperial Void to kneel before me and admit defeat." "In your dreams!" Wudi shouted. His face was scrunched up in fury, yet he forcefully stopped himself from lashing out. This was only natural. He was still unable to ingest crimson demonic earth, so battling against Ling Han at this moment would be a terrible decision for him. However, would Ling Han care about this? He dashed forward, throwing punch after punch. Wudi hurriedly shot back in retreat. He knew that there was a slight gulf between him and Ling Han, so he would definitely be at a disadvantage if they exchanged blows head-on. Thus, he needed to buy some time. As long as he could drag things on until he could ingest the crimson demonic earth again, he could launch a furious counterattack and perhaps even kill Ling Han. However, Ling Han was already brimming with killing intent. He channeled the regulations one after another, unleashing a petrifying might. Fortunately, Wudi had the help of the golden purple staff. Otherwise, he would have been killed by Ling Han within 100 strikes. A battle prowess gap of 100 points was like the gap between a monarch tier and an emperor tier. Ling Han roared with laughter, mocking, "You should change your name!" His name was Wudi I, yet he was retreating in disarray at this moment. Moreover, this was against an opponent at the same cultivation level. Wudi's face went red with embarrassment. At that time, he had indeed been invincible among his peers. No one at the same cultivation level could rival him. If not for the profound opportunity today, he would have become a 9th Heaven Celestial King a very long time ago. Would Ling Han have had the chance to act so wantonly before him? Wudi simply swung his staff to dispel the regulations. He remained silent no matter how Ling Han taunted him. However, Ling Han's attacks became increasingly powerful, and it was as if each punch could shatter heaven and earth. Wudi started to struggle more and more. Even though he continued to evade, just being scraped by Ling Han's fists would open gaping wounds on his body. Moreover, Ling Han was insanely fast, so if it weren't for Wudi's celestial tool, perhaps he would have already become a corpse. In any case, he was unaware of the freakish nature of Ling Han's body arts, so he refused to believe that the gulf between them was so great. He was convinced that Ling Han had definitely ingested some crimson demonic earth, and he was convinced that Ling Han was taking advantage of this fact to kill him as quickly as possible. Shameless! Absolutely shameless! Wudi gritted his teeth as he defended with all his might. He was the descendant of a top-notch celestial king, and he was also a freakish prodigy who had been invincible during his time. Thus, he naturally had his own outstanding talents and entire suites of celestial techniques that he could unleash. This was all to buy just a little bit of time. However, under the suppression of absolute strength, his desire was nothing but an unreachable dream. "You're far too shameless!" he roared in fury. Ling Han had definitely told the Empress and Hunyo to attack him on purpose just then. They had definitely attacked him on purpose to make him ingest some crimson demonic earth. Chapter 2434 Coming to the Rescue. Chapter 2434 Coming to the Rescue. Ling Han couldn't be bothered correcting Wudi. This man was a walking corpse, so was there any need to waste his breath? Ling Han unleashed his full strength, combining his body arts with his power of regulations. Even though his vitality index couldn't surpass 5,000, his battle prowess had indeed risen to a new height. Regardless of what Wudi did, he was unable to turn the tables. Ah! Wudi bellowed in anger. He was filled with rage. He was only a tiny bit away. He could almost ingest the crimson demonic earth again. However, even though he was so close, he was unable to hold on any longer. He was going to lose his life here. He was naturally unwilling to die here. He had been sealed for several epochs, and he had also been an invincible prodigy during his time. However, Ling Han's punches grew heavier and heavier, slowly forcing him to the brink. Pung! A fist swung over, and Wudi was unable to defend himself any longer. The fist instantly struck his forehead. With Ling Han's devastating power, this fist was definitely powerful enough to pulverize his head into pieces. Ha! Astonishment spread across Ling Han's face. Even though his fist had struck Wudi, it hadn't struck anything physical. It was the might of that celestial tool. Golden-purple light pulsated, an energy that was far superior to the first heaven burst into the surroundings, rushing at Ling Han. Even though Ling Han had already had a bad premonition, and even though he had already channeled the indestructible heaven's scroll, he still felt like his entire right arm had been shattered by the overwhelming collision. Moreover, his internal organs had also been severely wounded by this collision. He felt indescribably miserable. A paramount aura hung over the sky as a 9-colored iridescent light hovered above the staff, transforming into the figure of a middle-aged man. The Imperial Void Celestial King! Wudi was delighted upon seeing this. Even he hadn't known that his father had hidden a wisp of his intent in this celestial tool. Perhaps the Imperial Void Celestial King hadn't wanted his son to grow too dependent on him, so he had kept this a secret. However, this wisp of intent would be activated if his son ever encountered life-threatening danger. Ling Han channeled a drop of indestructible true fluid, allowing his wounds to rapidly heal. However, he had been struck by a celestial tool, so his wounds couldn't heal immediately. He silently reminded himself not to underestimate others. Otherwise, he might truly lose his life due to carelessness. Ha! Wudi roared with laughter. Who could have imagined that the tables would turn so suddenly? Right now, Ling Han was severely wounded, and he could imminently ingest some crimson demonic earth again. Soon, it would be his turn to pummel Ling Han. Brat, don't be so full of yourself. Showing off will get you killed off, he taunted. Even though his father had only left a wisp of his intent, this was already enough to activate the celestial tool. Moreover, even though this celestial tool had been forged by the Imperial Void Celestial King long ago, he had already been a 9th Heaven Celestial King at that time. As such, this tool was profoundly powerful. With this celestial staff, he was essentially undying and invincible. Did he need to fear anyone? Ling Han smiled faintly. He refused to believe that the Imperial Void Celestial King's wisp of intent could last forever. Thus, once this wisp of intent disappeared, he could suppress and kill Wudi just like before. He definitely had to kill him. To say nothing of Wudi's arrogance, just his relationship with the Imperial Void Celestial King was already reason enough. The same back at you. Showing off will get you killed off, Ling Han said. Die! Wudi roared as he swept his staff at Ling Han. Because he was no longer in danger of death at this moment, his staff also lost its might. After all, this was the Celestial Path, a place that Celestial Kings couldn't enter at all. In fact, only powerful 9th Heaven Celestial Kings such as the Imperial Void Celestial Kings could leave a wisp of their intent inside a celestial tool to activate it. Thus, this wisp of intent had naturally been extremely weak and fragile. It was only because of this that it had been able to deceive heaven and earth. Moreover, it was only natural that it would only activate when Wudi encountered life-threatening danger. Ling Han humphed as he replied with a punch. Pung! The celestial staff was immediately blasted back, almost prying itself from Wudi's grip. Wudi was astonished. He had thought that Ling Han was severely wounded and almost on the brink of death. After all, this was a celestial tool that had been forged by a ninth heaven celestial king. In fact, this tool could easily kill even first heaven celestial kings. However, Ling Han's powerful counterattack told him otherwise. It told him that Ling Han was far less affected than he had imagined. Quite the contrary, in fact. Ling Han's battle prowess was still near its peak. How was this possible? His father had personally forged this celestial tool. He was unable to accept this. Just what kind of freak was Ling Han? To say nothing of such a freak, he had been the only monarch star during his time. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been invincible among his peers. Wudi stood with his staff. Right now, his task was extremely simple. He needed to buy enough time so that he could ingest the crimson demonic earth again. At that time, he could definitely turn the tables and achieve victory. This was because Ling Han had surely ingested the crimson demonic earth before him. Of course, his confidence was built on the assumption that no one could unleash a battle prowess at the Celestial King tier without ingesting crimson demonic earth. However, who told Ling Han to be such a freakish being? He was indeed such a heaven-defying existence. Ling Han continued his furious attacks. At this moment, his wounds had already been fully healed by the indestructible true fluid. He was still brimming with power. As long as the celestial tool didn't unleash its might, what challenge could Wudi pose? With his experience from just then, he naturally wouldn't put himself in danger anymore. He stood further away from Wudi as he attacked him. This caused his attacks to become weaker, but he was much more powerful than Wudi, so he could easily corner the latter and place him in a deadly situation. Because of this, the wisp of Celestial King intent in the golden-purple celestial staff was activated time and time again. After several dozen times, it was extremely clear that the Imperial Void Celestial King's projection was becoming fainter and fainter. This signified that the Imperial Void Celestial King's wisp of intent could save his son several dozen times. Indeed, this was a reflection of just how much he cared about his son. However, who could have imagined that he would come across a freak like Ling Han on the celestial path? Before long, he had already been pushed to the brink of despair. Detestable! Damn it! Wudi roared. However, in order to train him, the Imperial Void Celestial King's wisp of intent could only protect him. It wouldn't attack his opponent. Thus, he was completely unable to rival Ling Han. Perhaps he was truly going to die here? Wudi involuntarily shivered upon thinking of this. From birth until now, he had never considered that there would come a day when he would die. He had a near-invincible father, and he was more so a monarch star himself. He was a prodigy destined to become a ninth heaven celestial king. He didn't need to worry about a mortal's tribulation at all. Now, however, the sword of death was already resting against his neck. Right at this moment, however, a look of delight suddenly washed across his face. This was an expression of raging delight. He could ingest the crimson demonic earth again. "Your time is over," Wudi said with a loud laugh. He hurriedly retrieved and ingested some crimson demonic earth, causing his aura to instantly soar. He brimmed with power as he reached the Celestial King tier. Die! He unleashed a furious attack, his golden-purple staff dancing and weaving with domineering might. Right now, his strength was already incredibly close to that of celestial kings. Thus, he could naturally unleash some of the might of the celestial tool, causing his battle prowess to elevate to a new height. Ling Han stopped attacking with his fists. Instead, he started to wield his divine demon's sword. Right now, the might of the golden-purple staff was far too great, so much so that the Celestial King Tiring was already unable to rival it. Thus, he had to unleash the might of the divine demon's sword. Boom! 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 The two Pseudo-Celestial Kings did battle with their celestial tools, elevating the intensity of the battle to a new height. The ordinary cultivators below could only gawk on in amazement. Wudi became increasingly ferocious as he fought. After being suppressed by Ling Han for so long, there was a flaming ball of anger in his chest. He was yearning to suppress Ling Han so that he could finally vent his anger. However, Ling Han remained unafraid, with his stamina immense and boundless. After battling for another 30 minutes, Wudi's expression involuntarily changed. Why was Ling Han's battle prowess still so great? It wasn't declining at all. Fuck. He had already ingested the crimson demonic earth for a long time. Chapter 2435 Resolve. Chapter 2435 Resolve. The more Wudi fought, the more apprehensive he became. What's going on? It wasn't like he hadn't ingested crimson demonic earth before. How could he not know about the duration of its effects? He had already struggled through his window of inability to ingest crimson demonic earth, yet Ling Han was still going on as incredibly strong as before? This made absolutely no sense. Perhaps Ling Han had ingested supreme crimson demonic earth. Strengthened crimson demonic earth? Right now, Wudi could only hold firm on his belief that he had ingested the crimson demonic earth later, so his battle prowess would definitely decline slower than Ling Han's. That being the case, he would definitely have the last laugh. The two of them continued to do battle. As he was someone who had been invincible during his times, Wudi's battle instinct and experience were tremendous. Moreover, his vitality index was also identical to that of Ling Han at this moment, and they more so both had a celestial tool in hand. Thus, he was naturally no weaker than Ling Han. The battle was fierce as they traded blows back and forth. Blood would spray through the air from time to time, painting a magnificent yet cruel scene. Ling Han was boiling with fighting spirit as his divine demon sword danced through the air. He was truly battling to his heart's content. He was relying on his body arts, so he could continue to battle like this for essentially as long as he liked. However, Wudi's situation was completely different. The crimson demonic earth would only be effective for a limited amount of time. Moreover, even after ingesting the crimson demonic earth, his battle prowess could only near that of celestial kings, not surpass it. Even if he ingested it twice, risking self-harm, he wouldn't be able to change this fact. Wudi's battle prowess started to decline again. He was astonished, furious, and terrified. This was inconceivable. This was unacceptable. How could such a freak possibly exist? Why you? Just what kind of technique did you use? He asked. He didn't want to die a confused death. Ling Han smiled in reply. Did he have an onus to explain this? You're about to die, so why do you need to know so much? Wudi's face flushed beet red. Back then, just how domineering had he been? He had crushed his opponents, and others could only prostrate themselves before him. Now, however, Ling Han was actually viewing him as a walking corpse? How could he accept this? He gritted his teeth as a thought flashed through his mind. If he were about to die anyway, what use was a grand opportunity? Wudi unleashed a loud bellow. Boom! A devastating aura erupted from his body. This was the aura of a genuine celestial king. Firstly, he didn't want to die. Secondly, there was a ball of raging anger in his chest. Thus, he decided to ascend to the celestial king tier. There was still an opportunity here, that being a flawless celestial seed. If he obtained it, he could near the fundamental source of heaven and earth. Upon becoming a ninth heaven celestial king, he would have a sliver of hope to become a heavenly venerate. Even though this would only be a sliver of hope, it was still enough to elicit envy and jealousy from the other celestial kings. To mention no one else, even the profoundly powerful Imperial Void Celestial King was still unable to take this critical step. It was also because of this that the Imperial Void Celestial King had sealed his single child for several epochs. It was for no other reason than to obtain this astonishing opportunity. However, Wudi couldn't wait any longer. After all, what use was a celestial seed to a dead person? He roared in fury, sending waves of devastating energy into the surroundings. His celestial seed mark transformed rapidly, growing into a true celestial seed. Ling Han frowned upon seeing this. If he allowed Wudi to truly become a celestial king, with his aptitude of a monarch star, his battle prowess would most likely soar to the second heaven. Add to that his celestial tool, and his battle prowess would become unimaginable. At that time, to say nothing of killing Wudi, Ling Han wouldn't even be able to rival him. He would become the one fleeing for his life. His only option was to kill Wudi before he ascended. Ling Han's gaze was baleful, and he showed no hesitation as he furiously lashed out. He decided to prevent Wudi from breaking through. "You can't stop me!" Wudi roared. He was a monarch star, someone destined to become a ninth heaven celestial king. Traversing the celestial path was only to complete a process, and he could easily condense a celestial seed and complete his ascension. Moreover, he had already obtained a complete celestial seed mark long ago, and he had also fully comprehended this mark. It was only because he yearned for this flawless celestial seed that he had held back from ascending for so long. He had simply used his celestial seed mark to become a pseudo-celestial king. Now that he was unleashing his cultivation, ascending to the celestial king tier was naturally an easy and smooth process. Boom! Bursts of powerful energy erupted from his body. At the same time, dark clouds gathered in the sky, forming heaven's calamity. Ling Han couldn't stop this. Right now, Wudi had truly gained the strength of a celestial king. Even though he had yet to fully ascend, there was already no need for him to consume the crimson demonic earth to maintain his battle prowess. Crack! A bolt of lightning cracked down, transforming into a giant lightning person as it attacked Wudi. This was the true battle prowess of a celestial king. It was as terrifying as could be. Ling Han stopped his attacks. If he continued to attack Wudi, that would be equivalent to becoming an enemy of heaven and earth. At that time, he would also be targeted by heavenly tribulation. Wudi also understood this, so he focused his full attention on facing the heavenly tribulation. He was a monarch star, but he still needed to draw on his full power to face this devastating heavenly tribulation. Otherwise, he might be pulverized into ashes at any moment. Ling Han turned his gaze to the center of the lake. Whoosh! He immediately dashed over. Since he couldn't stop Wudi, he might as well obtain the celestial seed first. In your dreams! Wudi was surprisingly still watching Ling Han, and upon seeing him dashing toward the center of the lake, he immediately lashed out to stop him. Ling Han humphed and said, "You truly think that I don't dare to face the heavenly tribulation?" He brandished his divine demon sword as he charged at Wudi. At the same time, he used his divine sense to communicate with the Empress and the others, telling them to obtain the celestial seed. Meanwhile, he would hold Wudi back. With Wudi's personality, he would most likely prefer to destroy the celestial seed than let it fall into the hands of someone else. The three women immediately heeded his call, dashing toward the center of the lake. However, they were all extremely careful as this place was definitely brimming with danger. Otherwise, this celestial seed would have been collected long ago. "You dare?" Wudi said with a humph. He threw a punch at the three women, with its might as tumultuous as the seas. Ling Han immediately slashed down, extinguishing Wudi's attack. He was filled with haughtiness as he said, "Your opponent is me! Detestable!" Wudi roared. However, Ling Han was indeed powerful enough to rival him. Wudi's eyes were spitting flames. However, he abandoned his attempt to stop the Empress and the others. Once he became a celestial king, he would possess a magnificent power. At that time, he could dispose of Ling Han and the others. As such, what did it matter if they obtained the celestial seed? With this in mind, he turned his full attention to the heavenly tribulation. Ling Han was also forcefully dragged into the tribulation. Another bolt of lightning cracked down from the sky, transforming into a terrifying giant as it launched a flurry of ferocious attacks at him. However, Ling Han was unfazed as he clenched his left hand into a fist. Meanwhile, he continued to attack Wudi with the sword in his right hand. He was going to disturb him no matter what. When ascending, who didn't yearn for an absolutely peaceful and quiet environment? Facing heavenly tribulation was as dangerous as could be. Perhaps 50% of people could ascend, but many others would be killed when facing heavenly tribulation, rendering all of their efforts futile. With Ling Han disturbing him, the pressure on Wudi became immense. Not only did he have to battle against the lightning giant, but he even had to facilitate the growth of his celestial seed. These two tasks already took up most of his attention. Now, he even had to defend against the ferocious attacks of Ling Han. As such, he was naturally in a dire situation. Moreover, his opponent was far too powerful. Ling Han was wielding a celestial tool, and he was powerful enough to threaten his life. Why wasn't Ling Han afraid of the heavenly tribulation? Wudi couldn't understand this. One had to realize that the heavenly tribulation targeting Ling Han was no weaker than the heavenly tribulation that was targeting him. That being the case, how could Ling Han still find the strength to attack him? This was naturally because of Ling Han's freakish physique. He could easily endure several hundred attacks from First Heaven's celestial kings. Even if you become a celestial king, you'll become the weakest one possible, Ling Han said calmly. His voice was filled with a domineering aura. Chapter 24:36 Leaving in Exasperation. Chapter 24:36 Leaving in Exasperation. The process of ascending to the celestial king tier was that of germinating and growing one's celestial seed, especially during heavenly tribulation. Even though this was dangerous, it was the best opportunity for the celestial seed to grow quickly. This was because heavenly tribulation contained the power of heaven and earth, the most useful nutrient for celestial seeds. Once heavenly tribulation passed, the growth of one's celestial seed would become unbearably slow. In fact, it wouldn't be strange to come across people who needed an entire epoch to advance to the first heaven. Even though Wudi was a monarch star, his cultivation speed at the celestial king tier would also be severely limited. Thus, if he lost this opportunity, perhaps he would need to spend 100 million, 1 billion, or even 10 billion years to make up for it. Wudi naturally understood this as well. He immediately flared up in rage, with his roars deafening like thunder. If he failed to advance during heavenly tribulation, it would be extremely difficult for him to suppress Ling Han even after he became a celestial king. At this moment, he finally chose to believe that Ling Han could indeed maintain this battle prowess for as long as he wanted. Ling Han had only cultivated for tens of thousands of years, so it was definitely impossible for him to have comprehended the heaven-forbidden state. Moreover, even if he entered this state, its effects would be similar to that of ingesting the crimson demonic earth. It was also subject to time constraints. "You're far too detestable!" Wudi roared. Was this person the nemesis of the Yu clan? Back at that time, his father had wanted to obtain the Origin Magic Cube. However, he had failed to do so because of Ling Han. Now Wudi himself had been stopped from obtaining the flawless celestial seed, and he was even being prevented from making the most of his tribulation. This was simply preposterous. Before accusing others, why don't you take a good hard look into the mirror first? Just look at your own immoral self, Ling Han said with a cold chuckle. He continued to slash down with his divine demon sword, not yearning to wound his opponent, and instead only yearning to disturb him. Half a day quickly passed by. Neither Ling Han nor Wudi had been paying attention to the situation below, so they had no idea whether the Empress and the others had obtained the celestial seed or not. They were fully focused on heavenly tribulation and each other. The dark clouds started to dissipate, after which iridescent colors appeared in the sky, accompanied by a refreshing fragrance. This was heaven and earth celebrating the birth of a new celestial king, the first one in tens of billions of years. However, Wudi showed no signs of joy at all. A halo of iridescent light appeared around him, yet its radiance was as weak as could be. In fact, it was so dim that it was almost impossible to discern. He certainly hadn't wanted to become the first person to advance to the celestial king tier. At the very least, he hadn't wanted to ascend now. Instead, he had wanted to wait until he had obtained the flawless celestial seed. Moreover, he had been greatly disturbed during his tribulation, and this had caused him to become perhaps the weakest first heaven celestial king in history. Of course, this was only temporary. This was all. This was all because of Ling Han. His eyes were ice cold, and as he swept his gaze around, many ascending origin tier elites were surprisingly sealed in ice. Regardless of how weak he was still a celestial king, after all. Moreover, he was a monarch star, so he was definitely no pushover that ascending origin tier elites could defeat. You deserve death, Wudi spat. He had already calmed down, but he was still raging with boundless killing intent. Linghan smiled faintly and said, "Heaps of people want to kill me. You're not the first, and you won't be the last either. However, the result will always be the same. You're all dreaming. No matter how sharp your tongue is, you're still just a measly ascending origin tier cultivator. Let me show you the true might of a celestial king," Wudi said as his black hair billowed in the wind. Boom! He brandished his gold and purple staff, on which numerous symbols started to light up one after another. He had activated a limited amount of power of the celestial tool. Even a first heaven celestial king couldn't completely unleash the might of a celestial tool that had once belonged to a ninth heaven celestial king. However, they could indeed unleash a portion of its power. In fact, this was already terrifying enough. Wudi was like a demonic god as he sent streaks of purple light through the air. It looked as if he were fearsome enough to exterminate all life. Linghan roared as he raised his sword to parry. Boom! 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 The two powerful celestial tools collided, causing swathes of space to implode and collapse. Everyone fled in disarray. In the face of a celestial king tier battle, what could they do but flee? Right now, Wudi was indeed powerful. After advancing to the celestial king tier, even though he had been greatly disturbed, his monarch star aptitude still allowed him to possess a petrifying battle prowess. His vitality index had reached at least 5,200. This put great pressure on Linghan. Fortunately, his divine demon sword had engulfed several celestial tools, which allowed it to gain peculiar abilities. This aided Linghan immensely. Otherwise, even with his freakish physique, he would have still struggled quite a bit. Bloody die! 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 Wudi roared. His eyes were red with rage. He had remained sealed for several epochs for none other than this rare opportunity, yet everything had been ruined by Linghan. He was so infuriated that he had to kill Linghan no matter what. Otherwise, his anger would never subside. Linghan humphed as he retrieved the heaven and earth origin stars. A cold shiver instantly ran down Wudi's spine. This was the instinct of a celestial king. After reaching this height, they were essentially one with the regulations of heaven and earth, so they could almost instinctively react to any danger. He immediately stopped his attacks, after which he hurriedly retreated 50 kilometers. His gaze was extremely wary as he stared at the item in Linghan's hands. Heaven and earth origin stars capable of exterminating low-level celestial kings, Linghan said in a calm voice. No need to feel envious. If you want to blame someone, you can only blame your father. He's clearly a member of the celestial realm, yet he's committing such traitorous acts. Otherwise, if he had been willing to properly fight against the invasion of the foreign realm, he could have obtained heaven knows how many heaven and earth origin stars with his military merit. Wudi's face twisted with rage. This brat was far too detestable. He was finding every excuse to taunt and ridicule him. However, Linghan's words were indeed true. He couldn't retort them even if he wanted to. Do you still want to fight? Linghan asked with a smile. His opponent had already become a celestial king, and he more so had a celestial tool in his hands. Thus, Linghan couldn't kill him like he had killed the Blue North celestial king. In any case, he had already ruined Wudi's plan to obtain the flawless celestial seed, and he had even forced him to rashly advance to the celestial king tier. It could be said that he had obtained a complete victory. He would collect Wudi's head after he advanced to the celestial king tier. Wudi shook with incandescent rage. Not even in his wildest dreams had he imagined that he would one day fail to defeat a measly ascending origin tier cultivator as a mighty celestial king. However, faced with the heaven and earth origin stars, he didn't dare to make any rash movements at all. This item could indeed obliterate his existence. He swept his gaze around, only to see that the sea pod of the lotus had already vanished without a trace. He furiously stomped his feet 3 times before turning around to flee. Whoosh! Divine light streaked through the sky, and he instantly disappeared from above the lake. However, he definitely wouldn't settle for defeat. He would definitely exact his revenge. Ling Han descended to the ground, where he was welcomed back by the 3 women. "You obtained it?" he asked. "Yes, we did," the Empress replied with a nod. She retrieved the celestial seed. "It's of the water element, and its quality is above that of the fruit from the first celestial tree," she added. This was entirely expected. The closer they got to the center of the celestial path, the higher the quality of the celestial fruits that they obtained. "We're making more and more enemies, and they're also becoming more and more powerful. We need to be extremely careful," Bewitching Maiden Rose said. They were already being targeted by 6 celestial kings, and now they could add Wudi to the list. Moreover, as time went on, Wudi would also grow more and more powerful. Ling Han flashed a carefree smile. "Let them be. After all, if we're powerful enough, who's going to be afraid of whom?" The 3 women nodded in agreement. All 4 of them were already pseudo-celestial kings. Moreover, Ling Han's battle prowess and defense index were already infinitesimally close to that of celestial kings. They truly didn't need to fear first heaven's celestial kings. Meanwhile, if they encountered second heaven celestial kings, they would still have the heaven and earth origin stars. They only needed to be careful, they didn't need to be fearful. The group set off again. They still needed to obtain many more celestial seeds. Chapter 2437 Undead Sea. Chapter 2437 Undead Sea. It didn't take long for the Empress to extract the mark from the first celestial seed, handing it over to Ling Han to refine alchemical pills with. Celestial seeds that had been transferred could only be used to refine alchemical pills. They couldn't be used for anything else. The 4 of them took a horse-drawn carriage again, slowly ambling on toward the next city. The huge size of the celestial path far surpassed Ling Han and the others' imagination. The Imperial Void Celestial King sealed his sons so that he could obtain a profound opportunity on this celestial path, Ling Han said as he recalled Wudi's words. He continued to speculate, saying, "To facilitate this, he was sealed away for a good number of epochs. Say, just what kind of opportunity might this be? The celestial path allows one to become a celestial king. That being the case, this opportunity is most likely a flawless celestial seed," the Empress said. Bewitching Maiden Ro nodded in agreement. Hunyo yawned in reply, showing no interest whatsoever. "A flawless celestial seed, huh?" Ling Han murmured to himself. He then smiled and said, "Then let's fight for it as well." After ambling on for 3 months, their carriage was finally forced to a stop. A vast expanse of sea appeared before them. A carriage naturally couldn't carry them across. If this had only been an ordinary sea with ordinary water, the carriage could have, in fact, carried them across with no problem. However, it was a pity that this sea was raging with tumultuous waves. They could see the flashing light of the Great Tao, which could easily kill immortal palace tier elites. "This is the Undead Sea," their coachman said. His face was filled with respect and apprehension. "Even though it's named the Undead Sea, 9 out of 10 people who enter aren't able to make it out alive. It's riddled with fatal dangers. Good lords, I truly don't dare to enter this sea." Ling Han didn't want to force him, so he nodded and said, "Very well. You can return now." He tossed the coachman a few star stones. Star stones were extremely rare on the celestial path, so this was suitable payment for his services. The coachman accepted the star stones and thanked them profusely. However, he didn't dare to linger around the Undead Sea for too long, so he hurriedly left on his carriage. In fact, they were still quite some distance away from the Undead Sea. Moreover, because of the landform, they could only see a corner of the sea. However, the roaring of the waves could already be heard. It was as if there were an earthquake, and it was as if there were a collapsing mountain. This was a deafening sound. "Let's go." They set off for the sea. After walking for 5 or so kilometers, a vast expanse of blue sea instantly appeared before them. This sea was boundless, and they couldn't see the other side even with their powerful Pseudo-Celestial King-tier vision. From time to time, however, they would see enormous waves that measured more than 300 meters in height. This was simply astounding. Casting their gazes to the shore, they could also see a gathering of many cultivators. Some were pushing newly built rafts into the sea, while others were doing battle with the roaring waves that were crashing toward them. In fact, these waves would transform into weapons and humanoids, and their battle prowess was surprisingly great. Ling Han could see the situation clearly. After entering the sea, the newly built rafts would quickly fall apart and be eaten away by corrosion. Meanwhile, their occupants would fall into the sea. After a short time, these people would resurface with their bellies facing up, as dead as could be. This was utterly terrifying. This seawater possessed a deadly power. However, once a person died, other cultivators would immediately leap onto their corpses. They would then unleash their power at the seawater, pushing the corpses forward and using them as a vessel. This was incredibly strange. Wooden rafts were unable to resist the corrosion of the seawater, yet these corpses could act as vessels with no problem at all. Ling Han came to a sudden realization. No wonder so many people were waiting on the shores. They were waiting for naive idiots to build wooden rafts and set out to sea, after which they would die and provide a suitable vessel. The cultivators on the shore had most likely come from Celestial King-tier clans. It was because of this that they understood what to do. "This is the origin of the Undead Sea?" the 4 of them asked in curiosity. They walked over, immediately attracting the uncanny gazes of many people. They were like wolves staring at a flock of sheep. In their eyes, Ling Han and the others weren't humans at all. Instead, they were vessels to cross the sea with. Ling Han swept his gaze over them, asking, "Who wants to target us?" He wore a faint smile, and he didn't appear angry at all. Some people recognized him, and they immediately turned around to leave. However, there were always those who didn't recognize Ling Han. They crossed their arms before their chest as they walked forward with disdainful expressions. "Brat, you're bringing 3 ladies with you, and they're even 3 extremely beautiful ladies. Are you treating this place like your own backyard?" someone said in jealousy. They didn't mind killing Ling Han and tossing him into the sea to use as a vessel. Ling Han glanced toward the person who had spoken. This was a man with red hair. In fact, even the hair on his body was red, and it was as if he hadn't evolved properly. He appeared as wild as could be. "What kind of beast are you?" Ling Han asked. The red-haired man was enraged, and he bared his teeth, revealing his 2 sharp fangs. "Don't provoke me. It won't do you any good at all," he said in a threatening voice. Ling Han laughed and said, "It's always me who says this to others. Now that I'm on the receiving end, it truly feels a little strange. After killing you, I'll carve the word fool on your corpse," the red-haired man roared. He resolutely lashed out, aiming to kill Ling Han. He would use this person's corpse as a vessel to cross the sea. In fact, he wouldn't mind taking the Empress and the others as his concubines thither. Ling Han simply replied with a cold glare. A terrifying burst of cold intent burst forth, causing the red-haired man to involuntarily shudder. His attack ground to a sudden halt. The red-haired man felt like his heart was booming like thunder, and this terrified him greatly. How was this person's gaze so harrowing? With a single glance, he had almost petrified him so much he wetted his pants. However, he pumped himself up, convincing himself that Ling Han had definitely cultivated some kind of secret technique that allowed him to possess a terrifying gaze. With a shake, he instantly transformed into a red wolf. His fur was like metal, and it was as luster as could be. He bared his fangs, releasing a violent aura. At the same time, the projection of a giant wolf materialized behind him, reaching 30,000 meters in height. It radiated with a boundless might. "Oh, so you're a wolf pup," Ling Han said with a smile. "Screech!" Little Terror couldn't help but bare its fangs with an angry expression. In its eyes, this red-haired wolf was challenging its status. "Go ahead," Ling Han said with a smile. He grabbed Little Terror from bewitching Maiden Rose's arms before throwing it at the Red Wolf. The Red Wolf was enraged. This person was attacking him with a small beast. Just how belittling was this? However, when Little Terror bared its frighteningly sharp teeth, the fur of the Red Wolf involuntarily stood on ends. Only at this moment did it understand the might of Little Terror. It looked harmless and adorable, yet in reality, it was a terrifying killing machine. He hurriedly activated his bloodline, causing red to flood the sky. This giant wolf projection also unleashed a howl, opening its mouth and spitting a blood arrow at Little Terror. Little Terror completely ignored this attack. Its physique could rival Ling Han's, so it had the right to act with such arrogance. Pun! The blood arrow arrived, yet Little Terror didn't even shudder. It continued to charge at the Red Wolf. With a quick lunge, it had already engaged with the Red Wolf. The roar of beasts reverberated through the sky as the large and small beasts engaged in a fierce battle. However, this didn't last long, as Little Terror quickly gained an advantage, and bit its opponent's neck. The Red Wolf continued to struggle, and this enraged Little Terror even further. It forcefully snapped its jaws shut, and with a few shakes, the Red Wolf quickly became limp. It ceased to move anymore. Everyone inhaled a sharp breath upon seeing this. This adorable and innocent-looking beast was actually a terrifying killing machine. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.